Snow pounded the city like shattered glass the night Kael Veyron died. At least, that's what the whole city believed. But the truth? An unknown woman saved the most dangerous crime boss from death, and that act of pity thrust her into a bloody, never-ending war. This is a story of betrayal, blood, and fire. Of an empire crumbled by the kindness of one man. Watch to the end, hit like, and comment on the city you're watching in so I know how far this story has come. Now, let me tell you about the night everything began to fall apart. The snow fell like broken promises that night, sharp and cold against the skin of anyone foolish enough to be outside. Sela Moreno was one of those fools. She pushed her cleaning cart through the revolving doors of Avalon Tower at 11:47 p.m., same as she had done 5 nights a week for the past 3 years. The security guard, Marcus, young and always half asleep, barely glanced at her ID badge before waving her through. She was invisible. That was the job. Inside, the lobby stretched out like a cathedral built to worship money. Marble floors so polished they reflected the crystal chandeliers hanging 3 stories above. Leather couches nobody ever sat on. Abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than Sela would earn in her lifetime. She wheeled her cart toward the service elevator, her shoulders aching before the shift even began. The elevator climbed. 14th floor, 16th, 23rd. The numbers glowed and faded. Sela leaned against the wall and closed her eyes for just a second. She'd been awake since 6 that morning, working her day job at the hospital cafeteria. 2 jobs. 60-hour weeks, a studio apartment with mold in the bathroom and a landlord who didn't answer calls. This was her life. This was all it would ever be. The doors opened on the 37th floor. That was when she heard it. A wet, rasping sound, like someone trying to breathe through water. Sela's hand froze on the cart handle. The hallway stretched empty before her, all shadows and gleaming floors. Nothing moved. But the sound came again, weaker this time, from somewhere near the stairwell entrance at the far end. She should have closed the elevator doors, should have pressed the button for another floor, should have done literally anything except walk toward that sound. But Sela had spent her whole life scrubbing up after other people's messes. She'd cleaned blood off hospital floors, vomit from restaurant bathrooms. She'd mopped up the evidence of human weakness and suffering so many times it had become mechanical. So when her feet started moving toward the stairwell, it wasn't bravery. It was just habit. The closer she got, the clearer the sound became. Definitely breathing, labored and desperate. And beneath it, a low groan that made her stomach tighten. She pushed open the stairwell door. The man lay sprawled across the landing like a broken puppet, blood everywhere, pooling beneath him, smeared across the steps, splattered on the walls in patterns that looked almost artistic. His suit, expensive, black, tailored, was shredded and soaked through. One hand clutched at his side where the fabric had been torn away to reveal a wound that was still pumping blood with each shallow breath. Sela's training kicked in before her brain could catch up. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands already reaching for his neck to check his pulse. Strong, too strong for someone who looked like he'd been gutted. "Hey," she said, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. "Can you hear me?" His eyes opened. They were gray. Not the soft gray of rain clouds, but the hard gray of concrete and steel. Even half dead, those eyes held something that made Sela's breath catch in her throat. Authority, violence, the kind of gaze that had seen terrible things and done worse. "Help me," he whispered. The words came out wet and broken, but they hit Sela like a physical blow. She'd heard people beg before, heard them plead and bargain and cry. But this man wasn't begging, he was commanding. Even bleeding out on a stairwell, he expected to be obeyed. "I need to call an ambulance," Sela said, already reaching for her phone. His hand shot out and clamped around her wrist. The grip was iron despite the blood loss. "No hospitals, no cops. You're dying. Then let me die quiet." They stared at each other. Sela's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run. This wasn't random. Wounds like that didn't come from muggings or accidents. This was execution-level violence. "Who did this to you?" she asked, his lips pulled back in something that might have been a smile. "Family." The word hung in the air between them like poison. Sela had worked in this building long enough to know what happened on the upper floors. The penthouse suites where men in $1,000 suits made deals that broke lives. She'd seen the black cars, the bodyguards, the women with empty eyes and expensive jewelry. She knew what Avalon Tower really was, a throne room for criminals pretending to be businessmen. And she knew, with sudden crystal clarity, exactly who was bleeding out in front of her. Kyle Veyron. The name everyone whispered, the ghost who ran the city from shadows, the man who owned judges and politicians and fear itself. Sela had never seen his face before. Nobody had, not really. But she'd heard the stories. 10 years of brutal control. Entire gangs wiped out overnight. Men who crossed him simply vanishing. She should have run. Should have left him there to bleed out like he probably deserved. But when Kyle Veyron looked at her with those dying eyes and whispered, "Please," something inside Sela refused to let go. "I have a car," she heard herself say. "Can you walk?" Sham. Getting him down 37 floors nearly killed them both. Kyle could barely stand, let alone walk. Sela wrapped his arm around her shoulders and took most of his weight, which was considerable despite the blood loss. He was tall, at least 6'2", and built like someone who'd spent years turning his body into a weapon. Each step down the service stairs sent fresh blood streaming from his wounds. He didn't make a sound, just breathed through clenched teeth and kept moving. The service exit dumped them into an alley behind the building. The snow had turned to sleet, sharp and cold, and it mixed with the blood to create pink rivulets that ran toward the storm drains. Sela's ancient Honda Civic sat 3 blocks away in the employee lot. It might as well have been 3 miles. They staggered through back streets and service alleys, avoiding the main roads where cameras watched every corner. Kyle's breathing got worse with each block. Twice he stumbled and nearly took them both down. By the time they reached the car, Sela's scrubs were soaked through with his blood. She shoved him into the passenger seat and ran around to the driver's side. Her hands shook so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine turned over on the 3rd try, coughing and sputtering before settling into its usual tired rattle. "Where are we going?" Kyle asked. His voice was weaker now, thready. "My place. It's 10 minutes. They'll find me." "Not tonight, they won't." She pulled out of the lot and merged into late-night traffic. The streets were mostly empty, just a few cabs and delivery trucks making their rounds. Sela kept to the speed limit and avoided looking at Kyle, who had slumped against the window with his eyes closed. Blood dripped from his suit onto her floor mat. Her apartment was in the Rust District, where the factories used to be before they moved overseas and left nothing but empty buildings and broken dreams. The rent was cheap because nobody wanted to live there. Sela's building had bars on the windows and locks that barely worked, but it was hers. She parked in the back lot and half-carried Kale up 2 flights of stairs. Her neighbors didn't open their doors. In this neighborhood, you learn not to ask questions. Her studio apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Neat, sparse, a futon in one corner, a kitchenette with a hot plate and a sink full of dishes she'd been too tired to wash, a bathroom the size of a closet, one window overlooking a brick wall. Sela dumped Kyle onto the futon and locked the door behind them. Then she just stood there for a moment, her brain trying to catch up with what she'd done. She'd just brought the most dangerous man in the city into her home, the man who controlled everything, who killed without remorse, who was currently bleeding all over her only furniture. "Bathroom," Kale said through clenched teeth. "First aid kit, towels. Bottle of vodka, if you have it." Sela moved on autopilot. She grabbed her battered first aid kit from under the sink, every towel she owned, and the bottle of cheap whiskey she kept for nights when the loneliness got too heavy. She dumped it all on the floor next to the futon. "I need to see the wound," she said. Kale's hands moved to his shirt buttons but couldn't manage them. His fingers were slick with blood and shaking from shock. Sela pushed his hands away and unbuttoned the shirt herself, trying not to think about what she was doing, trying not to look at his face. The wound was a ragged gash that started just below his ribs and curved around toward his back. Deep, but not immediately fatal. Whoever had done this hadn't wanted him to die fast. They'd wanted him to suffer. "Knife?" Sela asked. "Sword." "What?" "Antique saber. Belonged to our grandfather. Lucien always had a taste for the dramatic." Lucien Veyron, Kyle's younger brother. Sela had heard that name too. Always in Kyle's shadow. The loyal lieutenant. the trusted second in command, the one who'd clearly just staged a coup. Sela poured whiskey over her hands and then directly into the wound. Kale's whole body went rigid, but he didn't scream. Just grabbed the edge of the futon hard enough to make the frame creak. "This needs stitches," Sela said. "Real stitches, from a real doctor." "You'll have to do." "I'm not a doctor. I work in a hospital cafeteria." "Then pretend you watched a lot of medical dramas." Despite everything, Sela almost laughed. Almost. She threaded the needle from her first aid kit, meant for small cuts and splinters, not massive wounds, and started stitching. Her hands shook. The work was sloppy. But slowly, carefully, she managed to pull the edges of the wound together. Kyle watched her work with those gray eyes, fully conscious now despite the pain. "Why are you helping me?" "I don't know. I'm not a good man." "I know. The things I've done. I don't want to hear about it." She tied off the last stitch and wrapped his torso with every bandage she had. It looked like a child's craft project, but it would hold. For now. Kale leaned back against the wall, his skin pale and clammy. "Your name?" "Sela." "Sela what?" "Does it matter?" "Sela Moreno, 26 years old, works 2 jobs, lives alone, no family, no boyfriend, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket." Sela's blood went cold. "How do you know that?" "I know everyone who works in my building, everyone who cleans my floors, everyone who could be a threat." He closed his eyes. "You're nobody, which makes you perfect." The words stung more than they should have. You're nobody. That was what she'd tried so hard to be. Invisible. Forgotten. Safe. "Get some sleep," she said, standing up. "I'll keep watch." "They'll come for you now." "Who?" "Lucien. His men. Everyone." Kale opened his eyes again, and there was something like regret in them. "You saved my life tonight, and that's the worst mistake you ever made." Checked. Sela didn't sleep. She sat in the dark with her back against the door, listening to Kale's breathing even out as exhaustion dragged him under. Outside, sleet turned back to snow. The city settled into its usual late-night rhythm of distant sirens and traffic noise. Her phone buzzed, a text from her supervisor at the hospital. "Where are you? You missed your shift." She stared at the message. Her day job. She'd completely forgotten. But what was she supposed to say? "Sorry, I'm hiding the city's most wanted criminal in my apartment." She turned the phone off. Her hands were still shaking. She looked down at them in the dim light coming through the window. Kael's blood had dried under her fingernails. She'd washed them 3 times, but she could still see it, still smell it. What had she done? The man on her futon was a monster. She knew that. Everyone knew that. Kael Veyron's name was spoken in the same breath as demons and nightmares. He'd built his empire on violence and fear. How many people had died because of him? How many families destroyed? How many lives ruined? And she'd saved him. Sela pressed her palms against her eyes and tried to think, tried to plan. But her mind kept circling back to that moment in the stairwell, the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd said please, like he was still human beneath all the blood and darkness, like there was something left worth saving. "You're an idiot," she whispered to herself. "Agreed," Kael's voice came from the darkness. Sela jumped. "I thought you were asleep." "Hard to sleep when you might not wake up." He shifted on the futon, wincing. "Come here." "Why?" "Because I need to tell you what's coming, and you need to understand what you're up against." Sela didn't move for a long moment. Then, against her better judgment, she crossed the small space and sat on the floor beside the futon, close enough to hear him, but far enough to run if she needed to. Kael stared at the ceiling. Lucien planned this for months, maybe years. He waited until I was isolated, until my most loyal people were out of the city or dead. Then he struck during the summit meeting, all the major players in one room. He made his play in front of everyone so they'd know I was finished. Why didn't he kill you? Because death is too quick. Lucien wants me to suffer first, wants me desperate and broken and alone. Then he'll finish it in public, in front of everyone who used to fear me. That's how you take a throne in this world. You don't just kill the king, you humiliate him first. So what do you do? Kael looked at her then, and for the first time she saw something behind the cold authority. Fear. Actual, honest fear. My sister, he said quietly. Lyra. She's 16. Never been part of this life. I kept her away from everything. Private school upstate, normal life, normal friends. She doesn't even know what I really do. Where is she? Lucien took her. That was part of the message he sent tonight. He has her, and he'll kill her unless I come to him. But if I go, he kills us both. His jaw clenched. I've done terrible things, Sela. Things that earned me this knife wound and worse. But Lyra is innocent, and Lucien is going to make her pay for my sins. The rage in his voice was so intense it made the air feel heavy. This wasn't the calculating crime lord. This was something rawer, more human, a brother who'd failed to protect his sister. How long do you have? Sela asked. He gave me 1 week. 5 days now, after tonight. Time to heal enough to put up a fight. Time to feel the full weight of helplessness. Then he'll send the invitation to her execution, and I'll have to watch or try to stop it. Either way, I lose. Unless you don't. Kael's eyes found hers. What? Unless you find a way to win, Sela surprised herself with the steel in her own voice. You're supposed to be the smartest criminal in the city, right? The one who sees 10 moves ahead? So start seeing. With what resources? My network is dead. My money is frozen. My allies have already switched sides. I'm one man with a gut wound hiding in a janitor's apartment. And I'm the janitor nobody notices, Sela said. You said it yourself. I'm invisible. Nobody pays attention to people like me. We clean your buildings. We serve your coffee. We're in every room and nobody sees us. She leaned forward. So use it. Use me. If you want to save your sister, you need someone Lucien won't see coming. Kael studied her face for a long time. You don't know what you're offering. No. But I know what you're facing. And I know that if your brother kills an innocent 16-year-old girl just to prove a point, then he's worse than you ever were. So either you let me help, or I walk out that door right now and call the cops myself. It was a bluff. Mostly. But Kael didn't know that. He smiled then, sharp and cold. You're tougher than you look, Sela Moreno. I've had to be. All right. Kael pushed himself up slightly, wincing at the pain. Then here's what we do. Tomorrow morning, you go back to work like nothing happened. Keep your routines. Be invisible. But while you're cleaning, you'll be watching, listening. Lucien will have moved into my penthouse by now. He'll be consolidating power, making calls, taking meetings. I need to know who's with him, who's still loyal to me, what his security looks like, everything. I can do that. And Sela? His voice dropped to something deadly serious. Once you start this, there's no going back. Lucien will figure out eventually that someone helped me survive. When he does, he'll come for you. And when he comes, it won't be quick or clean. He'll make an example of you. The word should have terrified her, should have sent her running. But Sela thought about her life, the endless shifts, the empty apartment, the years of being nobody. Maybe this was her chance to be something more. Or maybe she was just too tired to keep running from everything. Then we better make sure he doesn't figure it out, she said. Kael extended his hand. It was still stained with dried blood, and the gesture was probably the closest thing to a peace offering a man like him could manage. Sela took it. The moment their hands clasped, she felt it. The weight of the choice she'd just made. The door to her old life closing. The door to something darker, more dangerous, opening wide. Outside, the snow fell harder. Somewhere in the city, Lucien Veyron was celebrating his victory, not knowing his brother was still alive. Not knowing a janitor had just decided to fight back. And in a tiny apartment in the Rust District, two people who should never have met began planning a war. Sela went back to work the next morning. She took 2 buses and walked the final 6 blocks to Avalon Tower, same as always. Swiped her badge at the service entrance. Nodded at Marcus, who barely looked up from his phone. Loaded her cart with cleaning supplies and headed for the elevators. Normal. Routine. Invisible. But her heart hammered the whole time. The building felt different now. Before, it had just been another place rich people paid her to clean. Now she saw the cameras in every corner. The security guards stationed at each elevator bank. The way certain men in expensive suits moved with the careful awareness of trained killers. This was enemy territory, and she was walking right into it. The service elevator took her to the 40th floor, executive suites. Sela pushed her cart down the hallway, her movements automatic after 3 years of the same routine. But this time, she paid attention. Noticed which offices had lights on, which doors were closed, which rooms had voices behind them. Most importantly, she noticed the security around the penthouse elevator. Usually there were 2 guards. Today, there were 6, all of them armed, all of them watching everyone who passed with the kind of attention that said they were expecting trouble. Lucien had locked down his brother's former territory completely. Sela kept her head down and pushed her cart into the first office on her route. Corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Desk made of dark wood that probably cost more than her car. She started with the trash, moving methodically, giving herself time to think. The office belonged to someone named Carter. She could see the nameplate on the desk. One of Kael's former lieutenants, maybe. Someone who'd probably bent the knee to Lucien real fast. She was wiping down the desk when she noticed the file folders. They were spread across the surface, clearly recent. Sela's training screamed at her not to look, not to touch anything, not to leave evidence she'd been snooping. But Kael needed information. She pulled out her phone, the burner Kael had given her that morning before she left, untraceable, and started photographing pages, names, addresses, meeting schedules. She worked fast, her hands steady despite her racing pulse. One document caught her eye, a security roster for something called the Coronation. Date, 5 days from now. Location, Avalon Tower, penthouse level. Guest list, every major crime boss, corrupt politician, and dirty cop in the city. And at the bottom, in neat handwriting, special presentation, Veyron matter resolved. Sela's stomach turned. That was how they were talking about Lyra. A matter to be resolved. She photographed everything and was putting the folders back exactly as she'd found them when the office door opened. A man walked in. Tall. Handsome in that polished way rich men are. Wearing a suit that probably cost what Salep made in a year. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, and when he smiled at her, it was warm and charming and completely empty. Lucien Veyron. She knew it instantly, not from photographs. He avoided cameras as much as his brother did, but from the way he moved. Like he owned every room he entered, like the entire world existed for his amusement.
"Sorry," Sela said immediately, grabbing her spray bottle. "I can come back." "No need." His voice was smooth, cultured, nothing like Kael's rough edges. "Please, continue. I barely notice when people are working." The words were casual, but they hit like a slap. She'd been right. Men like Lucien didn't see people like her. They looked right through them.
She went back to wiping down surfaces while Lucien moved to the desk. He gathered up the files she'd just been photographing and tucked them under his arm. Then he paused, looking at her directly for the first time. "You're new," he said. 3 years? Sela said, keeping her voice flat. Bored. "Funny. I never noticed you before." "Most people don't." "I suppose that's true." He smiled again. "What's your name?" "Sela." "Just Sela?" "Moreno."
"Well, Sela Moreno, you do excellent work. Very thorough." He gestured at the desk. "Not a speck of dust." "Thank you, sir. Tell me something." Lucien leaned against the desk, still watching her. "Have you seen anything unusual in the building lately? Anyone who doesn't belong? Any strange activity?" Sela's heart stopped, but she forced herself to keep wiping the window, her movements steady. "Like what?" "Oh, I don't know. Just keeping an eye out. Security concerns, you understand."
"I mostly work at night, after everyone leaves. I don't see much of anything." "Of course." But his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Still, if you do notice something, anything at all, I'd appreciate a call. There's a substantial reward for information." He handed her a business card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, a phone number, nothing else. Sela took it with cleaning glove-covered hands. "I'll keep that in mind." "Please do." Lucien pushed off the desk and headed for the door. He paused at the threshold. "You know, Sela, you strike me as a smart woman, the kind who knows how to survive in a city like this. I hope you continue to make smart choices." Then he was gone. Sela waited until his footsteps faded before she let herself breathe again. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the edge of the desk to steady them. He knew, or he suspected, or maybe he was just paranoid, testing everyone. Either way, she just looked the devil in the eyes and lied to his face. She finished her shift on autopilot, photographing what she could, listening to conversations through closed doors, mapping out security patterns. By the time she left the building at dawn, she had enough information to fill a small book. The bus ride home felt like it took forever. Sila kept checking over her shoulder, certain she'd see Lucien's men following her. But the streets were empty except for early morning commuters who didn't notice her any more than they ever did. She unlocked her apartment door and stepped inside. Kael was awake, sitting on the futon with his shirt off. The bandages were clean, he'd changed them himself, and some color had returned to his face. He looked up when she entered, those gray eyes sharp. "Well?" he asked. Sila locked the door behind her and pulled out the burner phone. She tossed it to him without a word. Kael scrolled through the photographs, his expression darkening with each image. When he reached the security roster for the coronation, his jaw clenched hard enough to make the muscle jump. 5 days, he said quietly. He's calling it a coronation, like he's a king now. He is. Or he will be, once he kills Lyra in front of everyone who matters. That's the final ritual. The last proof that the old regime is dead. Kael looked up at her. "Did anyone notice you?" Sila hesitated. "What happened?" Kael's voice went sharp. "I ran into Lucien. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kael went completely still, and Sila realized for the first time just how dangerous he could be. Even wounded, even weak. There was something coiled in him, ready to spring. "He spoke to you," Kael said. "Not a question." "He asked if I'd seen anything unusual, offered a reward for information. I told him I work nights and don't see much." "Did he believe you?" "I don't know." Sila pulled off her jacket and sat down hard on the floor. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, leaving her exhausted. "He said I seemed smart, said he hoped I'd continue making smart choices. Then he left." Kael was quiet for a long time. Then, "He's testing, putting out feelers. Lucien knows someone helped me, but he doesn't know who yet. So he's watching everyone, especially the people no one notices. So what do? We move faster." Kael stood up slowly, wincing but moving with more strength than yesterday. "I need to reach out to the people on this list. See who's truly loyal and who just bent to survive. If I can rally even 5 or 6 of my old network, we might have a chance." "A chance at what? You can't fight everyone in that building." "No. But I can create chaos, and in chaos you can save one girl." His eyes met hers. "That's all I care about now. Getting Lyra out alive. Everything else, my empire, my power, my revenge, it's all secondary." The words sounded true, but Sila had learned enough about men like Kael to know that truth was complicated. He wanted to save his sister, but he also wanted to make Lucien pay. And in the collision of those two desires, people would die, maybe her included. "I need to sleep," she said. "I've been up for 36 hours. Take the bed. I'll keep watch." "It's a futon. There is no bed." Kael gestured at the small space. "Then we'll share. I don't bite, usually." Despite everything, Sila almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she grabbed her spare blanket and pillow and collapsed onto the futon beside him, too tired to argue or care about propriety. She was asleep within seconds. She dreamed of snow turning red. Pan. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of work, surveillance, and planning. Sela kept up her routines. 2 jobs, 2 buses, the same exhausted invisibility that had defined her life. But now she was also a spy, gathering intelligence from every corner of Avalon Tower. She photographed documents, recorded conversations, mapped security rotations, and every night she brought it all home to Kael. He worked from her apartment like a general planning a siege. He'd managed to contact 3 of his old network, people who'd gone underground when Lucien made his move. They were scared, weak, but they were something. He also had money stashed in accounts Lucas didn't know about, and weapons hidden in places his brother had never thought to look. Slowly, impossibly, a plan started to take shape, but the closer they got to the coronation, the tighter Lucien's security became. On the 3rd night, Sela came home to find Kael standing by the window, staring out at the city. He'd healed enough to move without wincing, and he'd borrowed clothes from somewhere, dark jeans, a black shirt. He looked almost normal, almost human. They moved Lyra, he said without turning around. Sela set down her bag. Where? She's in the building now, 40th floor, private suite. 6 guards outside her door, 2 inside. Lucienne wants her close for the ceremony. Is she okay?
I don't know. His voice was raw. I haven't seen her in 6 months, haven't even called. I kept her away to keep her safe, and now she's trapped because of me. Sela crossed to stand beside him. Below, the city sprawled out in endless lights. Millions of people living their lives, none of them knowing that in 2 days, a 16-year-old girl would be murdered to prove a point. We'll get her out, Sela said. You don't know that. No. But I know you won't stop trying. Kale finally looked at her. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have walked away a dozen times, could have called the cops, could have taken Lucien's reward money. But you're still here. Sela thought about it, about all the years of being invisible, about scrubbing floors and serving food and existing in the margins of other people's lives, about the crushing weight of ordinariness. Because you asked for help, she said finally, and I'm tired of pretending I don't care about anything. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. Kale held her gaze for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand, not grasping or demanding, just holding. His palm was warm against hers, and there was something in the gesture that felt like an apology, or maybe a prayer. 2 days, he said, and then it all goes to hell. The day before the coronation, Sela woke to find Kael gone. Her eyes snapped open, heart already racing before her brain caught up. The apartment was silent except for the hiss of steam pipes and the distant groan of traffic. Gray morning light filtered through the window. The futon beside her was empty, the blanket thrown back. She sat up too fast, dizzy from lack of sleep. Kael? No answer. The bathroom door stood open, empty. The kitchenette was dark. She crossed to the window and looked down at the parking lot. Her car sat where she'd left it, covered in a thin layer of fresh snow. He wouldn't have run, not with Lyra still trapped. But the knot in Sela's stomach said something was wrong anyway. Then the door opened. Kael stepped inside, carrying a paper bag that smelled like coffee and something fried. He locked the door behind him with one hand, moving with the careful economy of someone whose body still remembered the knife wound, even if it had started to heal. You left, Sela said. The words came out sharper than she meant. We needed food. He set the bag on the counter. And I needed to see the building in daylight. Check the approaches. Someone could have seen you. No one saw me. He pulled out 2 foam cups and handed her one. I've been invisible in this city longer than you've been alive. Sela took the coffee but didn't drink it. Her hands were shaking. She'd woken up alone, and for just a moment she'd thought, what? That he'd abandoned her, used her, and disappeared? That she'd wake up to find cops at the door? Hey. Kael's voice went softer. I came back. I know. Do you? He studied her face. Because you look like you expected me to bolt. Can you blame me? The words spilled out before she could stop them. You're a criminal, a killer. For all I know, everything you've told me is a lie. Maybe there is no sister. Maybe this is all some game and I'm just the idiot who fell for it. Kael set down his coffee very carefully. When he spoke, his voice was cold, controlled. You want to know if Lyra is real. I want to know if any of this is real. He pulled out his phone, not the burner, but an old smartphone with a cracked screen, and scrolled through photos. Then he turned it toward her. The girl in the picture was young, 16, maybe 17. Long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a school uniform and laughing at something off camera. She had Kael's eyes, that same gray, but everything else about her was bright and unbroken. That's from 8 months ago, Kael said quietly. Last time I saw her. I took her to dinner at some Italian place she liked. She told me about her AP classes and her swim team and some boy she thought was cute. Normal teenage stuff. She has no idea what I really do. Thinks I'm an import-export, whatever the hell that means. He scrolled to another photo. Same girl, younger this time, maybe 12. Standing between 2 men. Kael and someone who looked like him but softer, kinder. That's our father, Kael said. 3 years before he died. That was the last good year.
Before everything went to hell. Before Lucien and I... He stopped, shook his head. Lyra was the only one who stayed innocent, the only one who didn't get swallowed by this life, and I kept her that way. Sent her away, kept her safe. Or I thought I did. Selah looked at the photos and felt something crack inside her chest. The girl was real. The fear in Kael's voice was real. Whatever else he was, monster, criminal, killer, his love for his sister was the one true thing he had left. "I'm sorry," Selah said. "Don't be." Kael took the phone back. "You're right to question me. Hell, you should have questioned me the moment you dragged my bleeding ass off that stairwell. But we don't have time for trust exercises anymore. Tomorrow night, Lucien kills my sister in front of everyone who matters. So either you're in or you're out. But I need to know now." The ultimatum hung between them like a blade. Selah drank her coffee. It was terrible, gas station swill that tasted like burnt rubber, but it gave her something to do with her hands. Outside, the city woke up slowly. Car engines turned over. People scraped ice off windshields. The world kept spinning like it always did, indifferent to the small tragedies happening in cheap apartments. "I'm in," she said. Kael nodded once. "Then we have work to do." They spent the morning going over the plan until Selah could recite it in her sleep. Kael had mapped out the entire 40th floor from her surveillance photos. He knew every entrance, every camera angle, every blind spot in Lucien's security. The coronation would happen in the penthouse, the same place where he'd ruled for 10 years before his brother put a sword in his gut. Lucien had a taste for symbolism. The guest list was a who's who of the city's worst people: crime bosses, corrupt politicians, dirty cops on six-figure side incomes, even a few legitimate businessmen who'd learned to profit from the city's rot. They'd all come to watch the execution and pledge loyalty to the new king. "Lyra will be brought up around 10 p.m., Kael said, pointing at the hand-drawn map spread across Selah's floor. "They'll keep her in the holding suite here until the moment Lucien wants her. 2 guards inside, 4 outside, 2 more at the elevator. Standard execution security." "That's 8 men. I can handle 8 men. You're still healing from a gut wound. I fought in worse condition." He looked up at her. "Your job isn't the guards. Your job is getting Lyra out once I clear the room. There's a service elevator here, same one you use for cleaning. It goes straight to the parking garage. I'll have a car waiting. And you? I'll be right behind you." "That's not an answer." Kael's jaw tightened. "I'll be right behind you." Salah stared at the map, trying to see what he wasn't saying. The numbers didn't work. Even if he took out the guards in Lyra's room, Lucien would have 30 more men at the party. The moment shooting started, they'd lock down every exit. Kael would be trapped. He was planning to die in that building. "There has to be another way," Selah said. "There isn't. We could call the cops. Anonymous tip. SWAT raid during the party." And Lucien kills Lyra the moment he hears sirens. Or she gets caught in the crossfire. Or the dirty cops on Lucien's payroll tip him off before SWAT even rolls. Kael shook his head. The only way out is through, fast and violent. Get Lyra and run before anyone can respond. While you stay behind and, what, fight 30 men alone? While I create enough chaos that nobody notices a scared girl and a janitor slipping out the service exit. He folded up the map. "This is the only play we have, and we're out of time." Selah wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic, but she'd worked in that building long enough to know he was right. There was no clean way to do this, no clever trick that would save everyone. Someone was going to die tomorrow night, probably several someones. "I need air," she said, standing up. "Where are you going?" "I don't know. A walk. Somewhere that isn't this apartment." She grabbed her jacket. "I'll be back in an hour." "Selah, I'll be back." She left before he could stop her. Hacked. The Rust District looked worse in daylight. The snow had turned to gray slush that filled the potholes and made the streets look like wounds. Selah walked without direction, her hands shoved deep in her pockets, her breath coming out in white clouds. She'd lived in this neighborhood for 3 years and never really looked at it. Just moved through it like she moved through everything, invisible and efficient. But now she saw the details. The boarded-up shops, the graffiti that covered every available surface, the people who'd given up trying to escape and just learned to survive. People like her. She stopped in front of a bodega and stared at her reflection in the window. 26 years old and already exhausted. When had that happened? When had she stopped fighting and started just existing? You got a cigarette? Scylla turned. The woman standing behind her was maybe 40, maybe 60. Hard to tell with people who'd lived this kind of life. She wore a stained coat and shoes with holes in them. Her face was lined with the kind of weariness that went bone deep. I don't smoke, Scylla said. Smart. The woman shuffled closer. You look lost. I live here. That's not what I meant. The woman's eyes were sharp despite the exhaustion. You got that look, like you're standing at a cliff trying to decide whether to jump. Scylla almost laughed. That obvious? I've been there. Everyone around here has. Moment when you realize you can keep drowning slow or you can do something crazy and maybe go down fast. She shrugged. Either way you're going down. At least crazy gets you a story. That's supposed to be comforting? Nope, just the truth. The woman started walking away, then stopped. For what it's worth, do the crazy thing. Drowning slow is worse. Then she was gone, shuffling down the street toward whatever came next. Scylla stood there for a long time, watching the traffic and the people and the city grinding forward. Somewhere in Avalon Tower, Lucien Veyron was preparing his coronation. Somewhere else, a 16-year-old girl sat in a locked room waiting to die. And in a tiny apartment 6 blocks away, a man who'd built an empire on violence was planning to tear it all down to save the one person he loved. Drowning slow or going down fast. Scylla had been drowning her whole life. Working jobs she hated. Living in places that weren't homes. Existing in the margins where nobody noticed and nothing mattered. Maybe it was time to jump. She headed back to the apartment. Cale was standing by the window when she returned, his silhouette dark against the gray light. He didn't turn around when she entered. I thought you ran, he said quietly. I thought about it. What stopped you? Scylla closed the door and locked it out of habit. A homeless woman told me drowning slow is worse than going down fast. Wise woman. She smelled like old vodka and hadn't showered in a week. But yeah, wise. Scylla crossed to stand beside him. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. I'm also angry. Even better. She looked at him, really looked. The knife wound had healed enough that he could move normally, but she could see the pain he was hiding, the way he held himself too carefully, the tightness around his eyes. He was in no condition to fight 30 men. They both knew it. You're not coming out of that building, Scylla said. Cale finally turned to face her. No. So this is suicide. This is saving my sister. His voice was flat. Final. Everything else is just details. And what happens to me after? When Lucien figures out I helped you, when he comes looking. You run. Take the money from the accounts I gave you. New identity, new city, new life. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. Everything you need is in here. Bank codes, contacts who can create documents. Enough cash to disappear properly. Scylla took the envelope. It was thick, heavy. The weight of a future she'd never asked for. I don't want your blood money, she said. Then donate it. Burn it. I don't care. But take it anyway. Because tomorrow night, whether we succeed or fail, you can't come back here. Your life as Scylla Moreno ends the moment you walk into Avalon Tower. The finality in his words hit her like a physical blow. She'd known it theoretically, but hearing it out loud made it real. After tomorrow, everything she'd built, her jobs, her apartment, her routines, would be gone. She'd be a fugitive. Or dead. I need a drink, she said. We need to stay sharp. I need a drink. Cale studied her face. Then he crossed to the cabinet and pulled out the whiskey bottle. Half empty now, after they'd used some for his wounds. He poured 2 glasses and handed her one. They drank in silence. The whiskey burned going down. Cheap and harsh. But it took the edge off the fear that had been building in Scylla's chest since she woke up. She drank the whole glass and held it out for more. Easy, Cale said. Don't tell me easy. You're planning to die tomorrow. I'm planning to throw away my entire life. Neither of us gets to say easy. She refilled her own glass. Tell me something. What? Why'd you really keep Lyra away? Was it just to protect her, or was it because you were ashamed? The question landed hard. Cale's expression went cold. Where's this coming from? I need to know who I'm doing this for. The man who loves his sister or the monster who doesn't want her to see what he's become? Both. The word came out rough, raw. I kept her away because I love her, and because I'm ashamed, and because if she ever looked at me the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm something broken and dangerous, it would destroy me. He set down his glass hard enough to crack. Happy now? No. Sila drank. But at least it's honest. They stood there in the failing light, two people who'd found each other by accident and were about to walk into hell together. The silence stretched out, heavy with all the things they weren't saying. Finally, Kael spoke. I need to tell you something about tomorrow night. What? If things go wrong, if we get separated or I go down before we reach Lyra, you need to know where Lucian keeps his files, the real ones, the leverage he has on every cop, judge, and politician in this city. He pulled out a piece of paper with an address. It's not in Avalon Tower, it's in a warehouse in the industrial district. Unit 47, code is 8265. Why are you telling me this? Because if I die and Lyra lives, she'll need protection. Those files are the only thing keeping Lucien's empire together. You release them, leak them to the press, the feds, whoever, and the whole system collapses. Lucien loses his power, and Lyra gets to live a normal life. Sila took the address. You've thought this through.
I've been thinking about it for 10 years. He met her eyes. I built this empire, Selah, and if I have to burn it down to save one innocent girl, then that's what I'll do. The weight of his words settled over them like ash. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about redemption, or maybe just basic human decency from a man who'd forgotten what that looked like. Okay, Sila said. If it comes to that, I'll do it. Promise me. I promise.
Kael nodded slowly. Then he did something that surprised her. He reached out and pulled her into an embrace. Not romantic, not sexual, just two people standing at the edge of oblivion holding on to whatever warmth they could find. Sila let herself lean into him for just a moment, let herself feel the solid weight of another human being. Then she pulled back. We should sleep, she said. Tomorrow's going to be hell. Tomorrow's already here, Kael gestured at the window. It's past midnight. He was right. Somehow an entire day had vanished while they planned and argued and drank bad whiskey. The city outside had gone quiet, that dead space between last call and first shift when even the criminals took a break. Sila collapsed onto the futon. She was so tired she could barely think, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. She felt the futon shift as Kael sat down beside her. Get some rest. I'll take first watch. Wake me in 4 hours. I will. But they both knew he wouldn't. He'd let her sleep until the last possible moment. It was probably the kindest thing he'd done in years. Sila closed her eyes and tried to imagine what came next. Tried to see herself walking out of Avalon Tower with a scared girl in tow. Tried to picture a future where they all survived. She couldn't. All she saw was fire.
But
Sela woke to someone pounding on her door. She jerked upright, heart hammering. Weak morning light filtered through the window. The clock on the wall said 8:47 a.m. Beside her, Kael was already on his feet, a gun in his hand that he'd pulled from somewhere. The pounding came again, hard enough to rattle the frame. Sila Moreno? A man's voice. Official. Cold. Building security, open up. Kael moved to the window and looked down at the parking lot. His jaw clenched. 3 cars. At least 6 men. How did they... Someone talked, or Lucien finally put it together. He turned to her. Bathroom. Now. Out the window. Fire escape. Go. What about you? I'll buy you time. Kael. Go. The door splintered as something heavy hit it from the outside. Battering ram. The lock wouldn't hold much longer. Salah ran for the bathroom. The window was small, barely big enough for a person, but it opened onto a rusted fire escape that led down to the alley. She was halfway through when she heard the apartment door crash open. Voices, shouts, the heavy thud of boots on thin carpet. Then gunfire. The sound was deafening in the small space. Sila froze on the fire escape, torn between running and going back. Through the bathroom window, she could see flashes of movement, hear men screaming, more gunshots. She forced herself to keep climbing down.
Second floor, first floor. Her feet hit the alley pavement hard enough to send shocks up her legs. Behind her, the building erupted in chaos. More shots, someone screaming, glass breaking. Selah ran. She cut through alleys and side streets, putting as much distance between herself and the apartment as possible. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. She didn't stop until she reached a diner 3 blocks away and collapsed into a booth by the window where she could watch the street. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the menu. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, came over. "Coffee, honey?" "Please." The coffee came black and hot. Selah wrapped her hands around the cup and tried to think. Kael was either dead or captured. The apartment was blown. Everything they'd planned was falling apart 12 hours too early. She needed to run, take the money Kael had given her, and disappear before Lucian's men found her. But Lyra was still trapped in Avalon Tower, and tonight, at 10 p.m., she would die. Selah pulled out her phone, her real phone, not the burner, and stared at the screen. She could call the cops. Anonymous tip, federal agents, someone who could actually help. But Kael's words echoed in her head. The dirty cops will tip Lucien off. Lyra dies the moment they hear sirens. No. This was on her now. She was still trying to figure out her next move when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the accept button. Selah Moreno. The voice on the other end was smooth, cultured, terrifying in its calmness. "I believe we met briefly, in an office at Avalon Tower." Lucien. Selah's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "I own half the judges in this city. Getting a phone number is trivial." A pause. "Tell me, how is my brother?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please, let's not insult each other's intelligence. You pulled Kael out of that stairwell the night I left him to die. You took him home. You've been hiding him for nearly a week, and this morning, when my men went to collect you both, he killed 4 of them protecting you." Another pause. "I'm actually impressed. I thought Kael would crawl into a hole and die. Instead, he found himself a little guardian angel." Selah's throat was so tight she could barely breathe. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer. Kael is in my custody now, wounded but alive. I'm going to kill him tonight at the coronation in front of everyone, but before I do, I want him to watch his sister die. I want him to know he failed. I want it to break him completely." "You're a monster." "Yes." No hesitation, no shame. "But I'm a monster who's willing to deal. Here's what I'm offering. You come to the tower tonight, walk in the front door, no weapons, no tricks. You watch the execution like a good girl, and in exchange I let you live. New identity, money, freedom. All you have to do is bear witness. And if I don't, then I hunt you down and make your death last for days. After I kill Lyra, after I kill Kael, after I burn down everything he ever cared about." His voice dropped to something soft and deadly. "Choose wisely, Selah. This is the only offer you're going to get." The line went dead. Selah sat there staring at her phone, her mind racing. Lucien had Kael. He had Lyra. He had all the power. And he was offering her a deal that would let her walk away clean. All she had to do was watch 2 people die and do nothing. The waitress came back. "More coffee, honey?" "No." Selah stood up, her legs unsteady. "I'm done." She left cash on the table and walked back out into the cold morning. The city rolled past, cars and buses and people going about their ordinary lives. None of them knew what was coming tonight. None of them cared. Selah pulled out the envelope Kael had given her. Inside was everything she needed to disappear. Cash, bank codes, contact information for people who could forge documents. She could be on a bus to another city within an hour. Could be someone else entirely by tomorrow. She thought about the homeless woman's words, drowning slow or going down fast. Then she thought about a 16-year-old girl who'd never hurt anyone, who didn't even know what her brother really was, who would die tonight because Selah had chosen to help a monster. "God damn it," Selah whispered. She couldn't walk away, even if it was the smart play, even if it was suicide. She couldn't just let Lyra die while she ran like a coward, which meant she had about 12 hours to figure out how to break into the most secure building in the city, rescue 2 people from an army of armed criminals, and survive long enough to make it matter.
She started walking toward the industrial district, toward Unit 47, toward the warehouse where Lucien kept his real power. Maybe she couldn't save everyone, but she could damn sure make him regret underestimating a janitor. Busek. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end street surrounded by abandoned factories and rusted chain-link fence. Unit 47 was unmarked except for the number spray-painted above a reinforced steel door. No windows, no signs of life. Sela circled the building twice, looking for security. Cameras on the corners. Motion sensors. But no guards. Lucien was confident enough in his locks and codes to leave the place empty. Mistake. She approached the door and punched in the code Kyle had given her, 8265. The lock clicked open. Inside was cold and dark. Sela used her phone's flashlight to navigate. The space was larger than it looked from outside, an old factory floor converted into storage. Metal shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes and file cabinets. Everything meticulously organized and labeled. Sela started pulling files at random. Photographs of judges taking bribes, bank statements showing payoffs, recorded conversations, video evidence, 10 years of leverage, all neatly cataloged. This was Lucien's real empire, the invisible chains that held the city in place, and Sela was about to set it on fire. She pulled out her phone and started photographing everything. Every document, every file, every scrap of evidence. It took hours. Her phone battery dropped to 15%, then 10%. But she kept going. By the time she finished, it was past 3 p.m. 6.5 hours until the coronation. Sela uploaded everything to a cloud server using the diner's Wi-Fi, one she'd set up years ago as a backup for her own documents. Then she packaged it all into a single compressed file and wrote an email. 2. Every major news outlet in the city, every federal agency, every watchdog organization she could find. Subject: The Veyron Files. Body: everything you need to know about who really runs this city. Release this at midnight if you don't hear from me again. She set it to send automatically in 12 hours unless she canceled it. Then she erased her browser history, wiped the phone, and threw it in a dumpster 3 blocks away. Insurance. That's what Kyle had called it. If everything went to hell tonight, at least Lucien's empire would burn with them. Sela bought a burner phone from a convenience store and checked the time. 4:30 p.m., 5.5 hours. She still had no weapons, no backup, no plan beyond walking into a trap and hoping she could improvise her way through it. But she had something Lucien didn't expect. She had nothing left to lose. Critique. Avalon Tower looked exactly the same as always when Sela approached it at 9:45 p.m. She'd changed into her work uniform, the same scrubs and ugly shoes she wore every shift. Her cleaning cart sat in the service entrance where she'd left it days ago, apparently untouched. She swiped her badge and walked inside like she'd done 1,000 times before. Marcus was at the security desk. He looked up, blinked, and frowned. "Moreno? Thought you quit. Family emergency. I'm back now." She kept her voice flat, bored. "They got me working the party upstairs. Overtime pay. Lucky you." He waved her through without checking further. Invisible. Even now, when Lucien's men were hunting her, she could still disappear into the uniform and the cart and the assumption that cleaners weren't worth noticing. The service elevator climbed. 10th floor, 20th, 30th. Sela's heart hammered hard enough to hurt. Her hands were slick with sweat. She wiped them on her scrubs and tried to breathe normally. 40th floor. The doors opened onto controlled chaos, men in expensive suits moving with purpose, guards at every corner, catering staff setting up tables. And beyond them, through the open doors of the penthouse suite, she could see the gathering. The entire city's rot collected in one room. Sela pushed her cart toward the service area, eyes down, movements mechanical. A guard glanced at her badge and waved her past. Another one stopped her and checked the cart, just cleaning supplies, nothing dangerous, before letting her continue. She found a supply closet and parked the cart inside. Then she moved through the servants' corridors that ran behind the main rooms. Thin walls, cheap construction. She could hear everything happening on the other side. Voices, laughter, the clink of champagne glasses. And beneath it all, the electric anticipation of violence about to happen. Salah found a vent near the floor and pressed her face close to see through the metal slats. The penthouse was packed. 50 people, maybe more, all of them dressed like they were attending an opera instead of an execution. Lucian stood at the center, holding court, charming and elegant and radiating power. And in the corner, flanked by 4 guards, was Kyle. He was alive. Barely. Someone had beaten him badly. His face was swollen and bruised, one eye nearly shut. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. But even broken and bloody, he still held himself like a king. Still met Lucian's gaze with something cold and defiant.
Brothers and sisters, Lucian's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Thank you for joining me on this historic night. For 10 years, this city bowed to a man who ruled through fear and violence. Tonight, we close that chapter forever. Applause. Actual applause. Sila felt sick. Lucian gestured, and 2 guards dragged someone else into the room. Lyra.
She was small, younger looking than 16. Her dark hair was tangled and her school uniform was torn and dirty, but her eyes, Kael's eyes, were bright with terror and confusion. Kael, her voice cracked. What's happening? Where am I? Kael's entire body went rigid. For the first time, the mask cracked. Lyra, don't look at me. Close your eyes, please. Kael? She tried to pull away from the guards. What did you do? What is this? Nothing. His voice broke. You did nothing. You're innocent. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Lucien stepped between them, smiling. Isn't this touching? The great Kael Veyron, finally brought low by the one thing he couldn't control, love. He turned to the crowd. My brother thought he could protect this girl by keeping her separate from his empire. But blood is blood, and debts must be paid. He pulled a gun from his jacket. Lyra started screaming. Kael lunged forward, but the guard slammed him back down. Lucien, please. She's your sister too. She's innocent. Take me instead. Kill me however you want. Just let her go. But that wouldn't send the right message. Lucien chambered around. The old king dies. His bloodline ends. The new era begins. It's poetry, really. He raised the gun toward Lyra's head, and Sila stopped thinking. She kicked open the service door and ran into the penthouse, her hand wrapped around the only weapon she'd been able to smuggle through security, a box cutter from her cleaning supplies. Stop. Every head in the room turned toward her. Lucien lowered the gun slightly, his expression shifting from surprise to amusement. Well, the little janitor actually came. I'm impressed. I honestly thought you'd run. Let them go. Sila's voice shook but held. Both of them. Or I burn your entire empire to the ground. With what, a box cutter? Lucien laughed. The entire room laughed with him. You have no power here, girl. No leverage. No. The warehouse. Sila cut him off. Unit 47, code 8265. I've been inside. I've photographed every file, every document, every piece of evidence you used to control this city. And in, she checked her watch, 2 hours and 13 minutes, all of it gets released to every news outlet and federal agency I could find. Unless I stop it. The laughter died. Lucien's face went very still. You're bluffing. Try me. They stared at each other across the crowded room. The silence stretched out, heavy with violence waiting to happen. Then Lucien smiled. You know what? I believe you. You're just crazy enough to actually do it. He holstered his gun. But here's the thing, Sila. Even if you release those files, it doesn't matter. I have judges, I have cops, I have lawyers who can bury evidence for years. You might cause me some inconvenience, but I'll still win, and you'll still die. Maybe. Sila tightened her grip on the box cutter. But you won't get your clean coronation. You won't get your perfect symbolic execution. And every person in this room will know you let a janitor make you blink. Lucien's smile faltered, because she was right. This wasn't just about killing Kael and Lyra. It was about power, about perception, about proving to the entire criminal underworld that he was untouchable. And Sila had just proven he wasn't. Counteroffer, Lucien said slowly. You give me the codes to stop that email. Right now. And I let you and the girl walk. Kael still dies. That's non-negotiable. But you two get to live. Run. Start over somewhere far from here. Sila looked at Kael. His face was unreadable, broken and bloody and utterly still. Then he nodded. Just once. Do it. his eyes said. Save her. Let me go. And Sila understood. This was the play he'd been planning all along. Use himself as bait, trade his life for his sister's, die so she could live. All Sila had to do was give up the only leverage she had. The room held its collective breath, waiting for her answer. And in that moment, Sila finally understood what she'd become. Not a victim, not a pawn, not someone who let the world push her around anymore. She was the one holding the knife now. No deal, she said. Then all hell broke loose. The first gunshot shattered the champagne glass in Lucian's hand. Scylla didn't see who fired. Everything happened too fast. One moment she was standing in the center of the penthouse holding a box cutter like an idiot. The next, the room exploded into chaos. Guards pulled weapons. Guests screamed and dropped to the floor. Someone tackled Scylla from behind and she went down hard, her face slamming against marble that tasted like copper and money. The box cutter skittered away across polished stone. More gunfire. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Glass shattered. Someone was shouting orders, but the words got lost in the noise. Scylla tried to push herself up, but a knee pressed into her spine, grinding her back down. Stay down, a voice hissed in her ear. Male. Unfamiliar. You move and you die. Through the forest of legs and overturned furniture, Scylla could see Kael. The guards holding him had dropped at the first shot, not running for cover, but falling, bleeding, dead. Kael rolled sideways and came up with a gun he'd taken from one of the bodies. His hands were still zip-tied, but he managed to grip the weapon anyway and started firing. 3 more guards went down. Then Kael was moving, cutting through the crowd like a knife through meat, heading straight for Lyra. Lucien stood in the center of it all, calm as a statue, and raised his own gun. No! Scylla screamed it, but the word got swallowed by another wave of gunfire. Kael reached Lyra, grabbed her with his bound hands, and dragged her toward the service door Scylla had come through. Blood poured from a wound in his side, fresh, not the old knife wound, but something new. He'd been shot. But he kept moving anyway, fueled by something beyond pain or reason. The knee lifted off Scylla's spine. She rolled onto her back and found herself staring up at a man in tactical gear. Not a suit like the other guards. Military equipment? Professional. Stay down, he said again, then moved toward the firefight. Scylla didn't stay down. She scrambled on hands and knees toward where the box cutter had fallen, grabbed it, and ran for the service corridor. Behind her, the penthouse had become a war zone. Bodies on the floor, blood on the walls. The beautiful people of the city's underworld trying not to die on imported marble. The service corridor was darker, quieter, but she could hear footsteps ahead. Kael, she called out, her voice cracking. Here. She found them in a storage room 20 feet down the hall. Kael had Lyra pressed against the wall, his body shielding hers. His breathing was ragged and wet. The new wound in his side was bad. She could see it through his torn shirt, blood pumping with each heartbeat. We have to move, Scylla said. Service elevator is blocked. Kael's voice was strained. Lucien locked down the building the moment shooting started. Every exit, every elevator. We're trapped. Then we fight our way out. With what? I've got 5 rounds left and a girl who can't shoot. He looked at Scylla. You need to take her and hide. Find a room. Lock the door. Wait until it's over. What are you going to do? What I should have done a week ago. He pressed the gun into Scylla's hand. Finish this. Lyra grabbed his arm. Her face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. You're bleeding. You can't... I'm already dead, kid. Have been since Lucien put that sword in my gut. I've just been too stubborn to lie down. He touched her face gently. But you're not. You get to live. You get to be normal. That's all I ever wanted. Kael, I love you. Remember that. Whatever else you learn about me, whatever terrible things people tell you I did, remember I loved you. And I'm sorry I couldn't be better. Then he kissed her forehead and shoved both of them toward a door at the end of the corridor. Go! Scylla grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. Behind them, she heard Kael's footsteps heading back toward the penthouse, back toward Lucien, back toward the violence he'd lived in for 10 years, back to die. The room Scylla found was some kind of supply closet, shelves lined with office equipment and cleaning products. One small window overlooking the alley 40 stories down. No other exits. Lyra collapsed against the wall and started crying. Not loud sobs, but quiet, broken sounds that somehow hurt worse. Scylla locked the door and wedged a shelf against it. Then she just stood there, the gun heavy in her hand, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. "Who are you?" Lyra's voice was small, lost. "Scylla, I'm..." What was she exactly? "I'm someone who made a mistake." "What's happening? Why is Kale..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "He said he worked in import-export. He said he had boring business meetings. He lied." "Yeah, he lied." Scylla checked the gun. 5 rounds, like Kale had said. She'd never fired a gun in her life. But he wasn't lying about loving you. That part was real. "Is he going to die?" The honest answer stuck in Scylla's throat. She wanted to lie. Wanted to tell this scared girl that everything would be fine. That her brother would walk through that door any minute and take them home. But Scylla was done lying. "Probably," she said. Lyra made a sound like something breaking. She pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them and just shook. Salah sat down beside her. The gun rested on her thigh. Outside, the city sprawled in every direction. Millions of lights that had no idea what was happening up here. People eating dinner, watching television, living their small, safe lives. "I worked here," Scylla said quietly. "Cleaning floors? 3 years. 5 nights a week. I was invisible. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "Then I found your brother bleeding in a stairwell, and everything changed." "Why did you help him?" "I don't know, because he asked. Because I was tired of being invisible." She looked at Lyra. "Because I'm an idiot who thought she could save people." "Can you?" "I don't know yet." They sat in silence. Minutes passed. The sounds of fighting from the penthouse had faded but hadn't stopped completely. Occasional gunshots, shouting. The building's alarm system started wailing, adding to the chaos. Then Scylla's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. She almost didn't answer, but some instinct made her press accept. "Scylla!" Lucian's voice was completely calm, like he was calling to discuss the weather. "I have to say I'm impressed. That little stunt actually worked. You gave my brother the opening he needed. 5 of my best men dead before anyone could react. Well played." "Go to hell." "Eventually, but not tonight." A pause. "Your friend Kyle is still alive, in case you're wondering. Wounded, obviously, but alive. I have him secured in my office. Would you like to say goodbye before I kill him?" Scylla's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want?" "The same thing I wanted before. The codes to stop that email. In exchange for safe passage. You and the girl. That offer still stands." "You tried to kill us. That was before I knew about your insurance policy. Now I'm motivated to negotiate." His voice hardened. "But my patience has limits. You have 10 minutes to bring me those codes. After that, I start cutting pieces off your friend until you change your mind. Then I kill the girl. Then I hunt you down. Your choice." The line went dead. Scylla lowered the phone slowly. Her hands were shaking. Lyra was watching her with wide, terrified eyes. "What did he say?" "He wants to make a deal." "Don't!" Lyra's voice was fierce, desperate. "Don't trust him. Kyle wouldn't want..." "Kale is about to get tortured because I thought I was smart enough to outplay a man who's been doing this for a decade." Scylla stood up. "The codes he wants? They stop an email that destroys his empire. Without them, he loses everything. So yeah, he'll deal. He has to. And if he doesn't, then we're dead anyway. At least this way, there's a chance." Salah moved the shelf away from the door. She kept the gun but tucked it into her waistband where it wouldn't be immediately visible. Not that it mattered. 5 rounds against an army. "Stay close to me," she told Lyra. "Don't run. Don't fight. Just do exactly what I say." "Okay." They stepped out into the corridor. It was empty now. The fighting had moved elsewhere, or ended. Blood trails marked the floor. Shell casings glittered under fluorescent lights. Somewhere in the building, alarms still shrieked. They walked back toward the penthouse. Each step felt like walking to an execution, but Scylla kept moving because stopping meant giving up, and she'd come too far to quit now. The penthouse was carnage. Bodies everywhere. Guards. Guess who'd been too slow or too unlucky? The champagne and blood had mixed into puddles that reflected the shattered chandelier still swinging overhead. Most of the survivors had fled. Only Lucian's core security remained, maybe 10 men in tactical gear, all heavily armed, and in the center, tied to a chair, was Kyle. He looked worse than before. Someone had beaten him again. His face was a mess of blood and swelling, but his eyes were clear, focused. When he saw Selah and Lyra, something like resignation crossed his face. "You should have run," he said, his voice thick. "Yeah, well, I'm bad at following instructions." Lucian stood beside Kyle's chair, impeccably dressed despite the chaos, not a hair out of place. He smiled when he saw them. "Selah, Lyra, welcome. Please join us." He gestured at the room like he was hosting a dinner party instead of a massacre. "I trust you've thought about my offer?" "I want guarantees," Selah said. "Safe passage, written, witnessed, and Kyle comes with us." "Kyle dies. That's non-negotiable." "Then no deal." Lucian's smile didn't waver. "You're not in a position to bargain. Neither are you. That email sends in—" She checked the burner phone. 93 minutes. Everything you've built, every judge you own, every politician in your pocket, all of it exposed. You'll be in federal custody by morning. Unless you stop it. Unless I stop it. Selah met his eyes. But I only stop it if all three of us walk out of here alive. Otherwise, you can torture Kyle all you want. I'll just sit here and watch your empire burn. The temperature in the room dropped. Lucien's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Kyle closed his eyes like he was praying or saying goodbye to something. Then Lucian laughed. It was genuine, delighted, the laugh of a man who just figured out the punchline to a joke everyone else missed. "Oh, Selah, 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 Selah." He shook his head. "You're magnificent. Really, I almost wish I'd found you first. You would have made a wonderful asset." "Answer the question. Do we have a deal or not?" "We do not." Lucian pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times. Then he turned it to face her. The screen showed surveillance footage. Multiple angles, all from inside the warehouse, Unit 47. And in every frame clear as day was Selah, taking pictures, downloading files, working her way through Lucian's leverage with methodical precision. "You see," Lucian said, "I knew Kyle would eventually tell someone about that warehouse. He's predictable that way. So I let the location stand, but I added something new. Cameras, sophisticated ones, motion-activated, uploading everything to a secure server in real time." Selah's stomach dropped. "The moment you entered that building, I knew. I've been watching you this entire time, watching you take pictures, watching you think you were so clever." He pocketed the phone. "And I've spent the last 6 hours tracking down every news outlet, every federal agency, every recipient on your little email list, made some calls, applied some pressure. By now, your message has been intercepted or deleted before it ever reaches anyone who matters." "You're lying. Am I?" Lucian gestured to one of his men, who handed him a tablet. He pulled up an email interface and showed her. Her message, her subject line, marked undeliverable, blocked by recipient's server. Every single one. "You have no leverage," Lucian said softly. "You have no insurance. You have nothing except a borrowed gun with 5 bullets and the misguided belief that you matter in this world." He leaned closer. "You're a janitor, Selah. You clean up other people's messes. That's all you'll ever be. And tonight, you're just another mess to clean up." The words hit like physical blows. Selah felt something inside her crack. All of it. The photographs, the planning, the desperate gamble, had been for nothing. She'd walked into Lucien's trap believing she was the hunter when she'd been the prey all along. "No." The word came out weak, broken. "No, You what? You thought you were special? You thought one act of kindness gave you the right to play in my world?" Lucien straightened. "Let me tell you what's going to happen now. I'm going to kill Kyle, slowly, painfully, while you and his sister watch. Then I'm going to kill the girl. Quick. I'm not a monster. And then I'm going to keep you alive for a very long time. Weeks, maybe. Long enough to understand the depth of your mistake." Selah's hand moved toward the gun at her waist. But before she could draw it, 3 guards had weapons pointed at her head. She froze. Don't, Lucian said. That would be too easy. I want you to suffer first. He turned to Kael. Any last words, brother? Kael opened his one good eye. Blood dripped from his mouth. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, duck. The window behind them exploded inward. Bukikis, glass and smoke and chaos. Scylla hit the ground on instinct, covering Lyra with her body. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. She couldn't see who was shooting or why, just muzzle flashes and screaming and the sharp crack of automatic weapons. Someone grabbed her arm. She jerked away and raised the gun, but it was Kael, somehow free of the chair, somehow standing despite everything. His face was set in a grimace of pure determination. Move, he roared. They ran, not toward the elevator, not toward the stairs, toward the shattered window where smoke was pouring in from something burning outside. Scylla's brain screamed that this was insane, that they were 40 stories up, that jumping was suicide. But Kael didn't hesitate. He grabbed a rope that hadn't been there before. Someone had fired it through the window and wrapped it around Lyra. Harness, he said, his hands working fast despite the blood. Hold on tight. Don't look down.
What about you? Lyra's voice was pure terror. I'll be right behind you. He pushed her out the window. Scylla lunged forward, but Kael caught her. She's fine. Rappel line. My people are at the bottom. She'll live. Your people?
Did you really think I'd walk in here with no backup? He was already wrapping the rope around Scylla. The men who raided your apartment this morning. Mine. All of them. We staged the whole thing to make Lucian think he'd won, to make him confident, to make him gather everyone in one place. But you were... Scylla's brain was struggling to process. You were beaten, tied to a chair. He had you. He had what I wanted him to have. Kael's hands finished the harness, and he met her eyes. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost happy. You were the distraction, the thing he'd focus on while I positioned my real play. I just needed him to bring everyone here. Everyone who betrayed me. Everyone who bent the knee. He glanced back at the penthouse where the gunfire was still raging. Now they're all in one room, and my people are cleaning house. The revelation hit Scylla like a train. You used me. I used everyone. No apology in his voice. That's what I do. The files. The warehouse. The codes I gave you. Irrelevant. I have copies of everything Lucian owns. Have for years. I didn't need your photographs. He started lowering her toward the window. But I needed you to think you were important. Needed you scared and desperate and willing to walk into this room, because Lucian would never suspect a janitor of being bait for a trap. Scylla grabbed his wrist. Her fingers dug into skin and old scars. The email. Did I even send it? Oh, it's sent. Just not to who you thought. My people intercepted it, made sure it looked blocked to Lucian, but the real files are already in federal hands. The arrest warrants will come through in about... He checked an expensive watch. 30 minutes. Every corrupt judge, every dirty cop, everyone in that room who thought they were untouchable. All done. And Lyra? Safe. Always was. The girl Lucian took wasn't my sister, just someone who looked enough like her in bad lighting. Lyra's been in protective custody since the night Lucian made his move. I just needed him to think I was desperate enough to storm in here alone. His voice went cold. I needed him to think he'd won. Everything Scylla thought she knew shattered. She'd been a pawn, a prop, a nobody playing at being a hero while Kael orchestrated everything from behind the scenes. The kindness, the vulnerability, the desperate brother trying to save his sister. All of it was a lie. You bastard, she whispered. Yeah. No denial. But you're alive. And in about 60 seconds, my men are going to finish killing everyone in that room who deserves it, including Lucian. So you can hate me tomorrow. Right now, you need to climb down this rope before someone shoots you. He pushed her out the window. Scylla fell into nothing. The rope caught and she jerked to a stop, her hands burning as they gripped the line. Below, she could see figures moving in the alley, Lyra being pulled to safety by men in tactical gear, the ground rushing up as she descended too fast, her hands slipping. She hit the pavement hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. Someone was pulling her away from the building, shouting orders she couldn't process. Above, more windows exploded. Fire bloomed across multiple floors. The beautiful tower was burning. And in the window 40 stories up, Silhouetted against the flames, Kael stood watching. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked down at her like he was memorizing her face. Then he turned and walked back into the fire. Halt. The next 12 hours were a blur of sirens and questions and exhaustion that went deeper than bones. Federal agents swarmed Avalon Tower, SWAT teams, fire crews. By dawn, half the building was rubble, and the other half was a crime scene. They pulled out bodies by the dozen. Guards, criminals, corrupt officials who'd been attending what they thought was a coronation and instead got caught in a massacre. Lucien Véron's body was identified by dental records. They found him in his office, shot 3 times in the chest. The official report would call it gang violence, turf war, the inevitable end of men who lived by the gun. Nobody mentioned Kael. Sila sat in a federal interview room and answered the same questions over and over. How did you get involved? What did you see? Do you know where Kael Véron is? She told them everything. The stairwell, the apartment, the plan, all of it. Except the part about being used. About being nothing but a distraction. About how she'd thought she mattered when she'd just been another tool in Kael's revenge. That part she kept to herself. They let her go eventually. No charges. She was a victim, they said. A civilian caught in the crossfire. They offered her protection. A new identity. Money for trauma counseling. Sela took none of it. Just walked out of the federal building into gray morning light and kept walking until her legs gave out in some park she didn't recognize. She sat on a bench and stared at nothing. Her phone, her real phone, recovered from the dumpster by forensics, buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Account number 847392847. Bank of Singapore. Access code. Invisible. $20 million. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over. Enough to matter. You earned it. K. Sela stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it and threw the phone in a trash can. She didn't want his money, didn't want his apology wrapped in zeros, didn't want anything that reminded her of the week she'd spent believing she was something more than what she was. A janitor, invisible. Nobody. She laughed, but it came out like crying. Or maybe it was crying that came out like laughing. Hard to tell anymore. The sun was rising over the city, turning the sky orange and gold. Beautiful. Indifferent. The world kept spinning like none of it mattered. Like a building hadn't burned and dozens of people hadn't died, and a girl named Sila hadn't thrown her entire life away for nothing. She sat there until the cold drove her up. Then she started walking again. No destination, no plan. Just one foot in front of the other because that was all she had left. 10 blocks later, she passed a coffee shop and saw the news playing on the television inside. Major crime bust, the headline read. Dozens arrested in corruption sweep. The screen showed federal agents leading people out of buildings in handcuffs. Judges, politicians, police captains. Everyone Lucien Ems had owned. Everyone who'd built their careers on rot and violence. All of them falling at once. The files had been real. The evidence had worked. The empire Lucien had built on blackmail and fear was collapsing exactly like Kael had planned. Sila stood outside the coffee shop watching until her feet went numb. She'd helped do that. Not the way she'd thought. Not as a hero or a savior or anything noble. Just as a piece on a board being moved by someone smarter than her. But she'd helped. And for better or worse, the city would be different because of it. That should have felt like something. Victory. Purpose. Meaning. It just felt empty. She turned away from the television and kept walking. Behind her, the city woke up to a new world. One without Kael Véron. Without Lucien Véron. Without the invisible empire that had run everything from the shadows. But Sila Moreno was still invisible. Still nobody. And as she disappeared into the morning crowd, she wondered if that would ever change. Or if being nobody was just who she was. 3 days later, a package arrived at the hospital where Sila had gone back to work. She was in the cafeteria serving coffee to doctors who didn't notice her when security called her name. Someone had left something at the front desk, for her specifically. The package was small, plain brown paper, no return address. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed a teenage girl standing on a beach somewhere warm. Lyra, the real Lyra, smiling at the camera. Alive, safe, free. The note was in Kael's handwriting. You were never invisible to me. Sela stared at it until the words blurred. Then she folded the note carefully, put it in her pocket, and went back to work. She poured coffee. She wiped down tables. She moved through the hospital like a ghost, exactly as she'd done for years. But something inside her had changed. She'd walked into fire and come out the other side. She'd stared down devils and refused to blink. She'd been used and manipulated and broken. And she'd survived. That had to count for something, even if she was the only one who knew it. She finished her shift as dawn broke over the city. Then she walked home through streets that didn't know her name, carrying a photograph of a girl she'd helped save, and a note from a ghost who'd made her believe, just for a moment, that she could be more than invisible. It wasn't enough, but maybe it was a start. Sela lasted 5 days before the photograph stopped being enough. She went through the motions: work, sleep. The empty apartment that still smelled like blood and whiskey if she breathed deep enough. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kael's silhouette against the flames, heard his voice. You were never invisible to me. The words were a splinter working deeper under her skin. On the 6th day, she called the number on the back of the photograph. It rang once. A woman's voice answered, professional and cold. State your business. I need to see Kael Veyron. Silence. Then, there's no one here by that name. Tell him the janitor wants to finish what we started. The line went dead. Sela sat in her apartment staring at her phone for 2 hours. Nothing happened. No call back. No message. She'd been dismissed. Erased. Invisible again. Then someone knocked on her door. Not the pounding of police or Lucian's men, just 3 calm, measured knocks. The kind that said whoever was outside had all the time in the world. Sela opened the door with a kitchen knife in her hand. The woman standing there was tall, Asian, early 30s, wearing tactical pants and a jacket that didn't quite hide the gun at her hip. Her eyes swept over Sela with professional assessment. You called, the woman said. Who are you?
Maya Chen. I work for someone you know. He wants to meet. Where? Somewhere public, somewhere you'll feel safe. Maya pulled out a card with an address. 1 hour. Come alone. Try to bring anyone. Cops, feds, your imaginary boyfriend, and the meet doesn't happen. She turned and walked away before Sela could respond. Sela looked at the address. A diner in the financial district. The kind of place that served overpriced eggs to bankers and lawyers. Neutral ground. She should have ignored it. Should have burned the card and gone back to pretending the last 2 weeks hadn't happened. Instead, she grabbed her jacket and headed for the bus. The diner was exactly as forgettable as its address suggested. Chrome fixtures, red vinyl booze, coffee that smelled burnt even from outside. Sela walked in at exactly the appointed time and scanned the room. Kael sat in a corner booth, his back to the wall. He looked different, cleaner. The bruises had faded. His hair was cut shorter. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, a dark sweater, and could have been any businessman grabbing a late breakfast, except for the eyes. Those were the same, gray and cold and watching everything. Sela slid into the booth across from him. You're supposed to be dead. I am. Officially. He pushed a menu toward her. Order something. We need to look normal. There's nothing normal about this. Order anyway. The waitress came. Sela asked for coffee. Kael ordered eggs and toast like they were old friends catching up. The waitress left and the silence stretched out between them. Why'd you come? Kael asked finally. Because I'm tired of being a pawn. Sela leaned forward. You used me. Set me up. Made me think I mattered when I was just a distraction for your real play. So I want answers, real ones. No more games. Fair enough. Kael sipped his coffee. What do you want to know? Was any of it real? The sister, the desperation, She stopped. Couldn't bring herself to say vulnerability. Did you actually need my help, or was I just convenient? Both. He met her eyes. Lyra is real. She's safe. Everything I told you about keeping her away from this life was true. But did I need you specifically to save her? No. I had people, resources, plans within plans. He set down his cup. But you were the wild card. The piece Lucien would never see coming.
A nobody with no connections who stumbled into the game by accident. That made you perfect. For what? For making him confident, for making him think he'd won. Kale's voice dropped. My brother was brilliant, Sela. Paranoid. He suspected traps everywhere. But a terrified janitor trying to play hero? That he believed. That he couldn't resist gloating over. And while he was focused on you, my real people moved into position. The coffee arrived. Sela wrapped her hands around the cup and tried to process. So I was bait. You were the story he wanted to hear, the one that made sense to him, the one that let his guard down just enough. Kale paused. But that doesn't mean you didn't matter. You walked into that penthouse knowing you'd probably die. You put yourself between Lucien and a girl you'd never met. That took courage. Real courage. The kind I haven't seen in years. Don't. Sela's voice came out sharp. Don't try to make me feel better about being manipulated. I'm not. I'm telling you the truth. He leaned back. I used you. I'm not going to apologize for it because I'd do it again if I had to. But you survived. You helped burn down an empire, and you walked away with your life. That's more than most people in my world can say. Your world? Sela laughed bitterly. You mean the world of people who treat human beings like chess pieces? Yes. The honesty of it hit harder than another lie would have. At least he wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't anymore. The mask was off. This was Kael Veron, the real one, sitting across from her. Cold, calculating, brutal when necessary. Why am I here? Sela asked. You got what you wanted. Lucien's dead. Your enemies are in federal custody. Your sister is safe. What else do you need from me? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need you to help me die. Oreitis. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sela stared at him. What? Kael Veron is dead. Officially. The federal investigation concluded I died in the Avalon Tower fire. They found remains, not mine, but close enough, and closed the case. I'm a ghost now. But ghosts leave traces, loose ends, people who might recognize me, might put pieces together. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. I need those loose ends tied off, permanently. Sela opened the folder. Inside were photographs, names, addresses, 6 people total. Some she recognized from Avalon Tower. Others were strangers. These are people who know I'm alive, Kael said. People who were loyal to me but might turn if the price is right. People who could expose me. And you want me to, what, kill them? No. I have people for that. His voice was matter of fact. I want you to help me find them. They've gone underground since the tower burned, scattered. Some of them might trust you, the janitor who tried to help, who got caught in the crossfire. You're innocent in their eyes, a victim. So you want me to be bait again? I want you to be paid. He pulled out another envelope, thicker than the first. $5 million, half up front, half when the job is done. Enough to disappear properly. New identity, new life, anywhere in the world you want. Sela looked at the envelope, at the photographs, at Kael's expressionless face. And if I say no, then you say no. You walk out of here, go back to your life. I won't bother you again. He paused. But those people in that folder? They're problems. And problems get solved one way or another. Some of them might decide you're a loose end too. Might decide the janitor who helped Kael needs to disappear before she talks to the wrong people. So it's work for you or die. It's work for me and have the resources to protect yourself. Or walk away and hope nobody comes looking. He pushed the envelope closer. Your choice. But you need to make it now. The waitress came back with Kael's food. Eggs over easy, wheat toast. He ate like they were discussing the weather instead of murder. Sela watched him and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was who he really was. Not the desperate brother, not the wounded king, just a man who solved problems by erasing them. And he was offering her the same choice he'd given everyone else in his life, join or become a target. How long would it take? Sela asked. 2 weeks? Maybe 3? Depends how fast we find them. And after? After, you disappear. I never contact you again. You get to be invisible for real this time. The kind of invisible where nobody's hunting you, where you can actually breathe. He met her eyes. Or you can stay Sela Moreno, hospital cafeteria worker, and hope that's enough to keep you safe. Your call. Sela looked at the photographs again. 6 faces, 6 loose ends, 6 people who would die so Kale Veyron could stay a ghost. She thought about the last 2 weeks, the fear, the violence, the moment in the penthouse when she'd realized she was nothing but a tool being used by someone smarter and colder than her. She thought about going back to the hospital, to serving coffee to people who didn't see her, to being nobody in a world that didn't care. Then she thought about the weight of the gun in her hand when she'd stood in front of Lyra, the feeling of doing something that mattered, even if it was built on lies. She picked up the envelope. 2 weeks, she said. Then I'm gone. And if you ever contact me again after this, I'll go to the feds and tell them everything. Kyle smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. Deal, Wosik. The first name on the list was Marcus Webb, the security guard from Avalon Tower, the one who'd waved Sela through dozens of times without really seeing her. He'd been on Kyle's payroll for years, feeding information about who came and went. Now he was hiding in a motel outside the city, too scared to run, but too paranoid to stay still. Maya picked Sela up outside the diner in a black sedan with tinted windows. She drove in silence while Sela read through the file on Marcus. He trusts you, Maya said. Or at least he won't see you as a threat. That's the opening. Opening for what? We need to know who he's talked to, who knows he's alive, what he's told them. Maya glanced over. You get him talking. I'll handle the rest. Handle how? You don't need to know that part. They pulled up outside a rundown motel an hour later, the kind of place that rented by the hour and didn't ask questions. Room 12, ground floor. Curtains drawn. Sela got out of the car. Her legs felt unsteady. This was different from the penthouse, different from the chaos and confusion where she could pretend she wasn't complicit. This was deliberate, calculated, cold. Knock on the door, Maya said. Tell him you need help, that people are looking for you too. Get him to open up. And then? Then step outside and let me work. Sela walked to the door. Her heart hammered. She could still walk away, could get in the car and drive until she ran out of road, could call the cops and blow the whole thing up. But Kyle's words echoed. Some of them might decide you're a loose end too. She knocked. Movement inside. A voice through the door. Who is it? Marcus. It's Sela. From Avalon Tower. I need help. Silence. Then the chain rattled and the door cracked open. Marcus's face appeared, older than she remembered, exhausted, scared. Sela? What are you doing here? They're looking for me. The feds. Lucian's people. I don't know who to trust. She let her voice shake. It wasn't hard. Please. I just need to talk to someone who understands. Marcus hesitated, then he opened the door wider. Come in. Quick. Sela stepped inside. The room was exactly as depressing as the exterior suggested. One bed, a television that probably didn't work, the smell of old cigarettes, and desperation. Marcus closed the door and locked it, then turned to face her. How'd you find me? He asked. I didn't. I've been running. Saw your car in the lot. A lie. But it sounded right. Are you okay? No. Marcus sat on the bed heavily. None of us are okay. Kael's dead. Lucien's dead. The whole tower came down. I should have run further, should have left the state, but I'm too broke and too scared. Have you talked to anyone? Told anyone where you are? Just my sister. She's the only one who knows I'm here. He looked up at her. Why? You think someone's coming? I don't know. Sela moved toward the door. I should go. This was stupid. I'm putting you in danger just being here. Wait. Marcus stood. You can stay. It's safer if we stick together, 2 of us watching out. I can't. I'm sorry. She opened the door and stepped outside. Maya was already moving. Sela didn't see the syringe, didn't see Marcus's expression change from confusion to terror, just heard the scuffle, the muffled sound of struggle, then silence. Maya emerged 30 seconds later, wiping her hands on a cloth. He gave up his sister's address. She's in Boston. I'll send a team. Is he? He's sleeping. Won't wake up. Clean. Quiet. Maya headed for the car. 1 down, 5 to go. Sela stood there staring at the motel room door. Behind it, Marcus was dying or already dead. The security guard who'd waved her through for 3 years without ever really seeing her, and she'd led him to slaughter like it was nothing. "You coming?" Maya called. Sela got in the car. They worked through the list over the next 10 days. Each one was different approach, different lie. But the pattern was the same. Sela made contact, gained trust, got the information Kael needed, then stepped aside while Maya or one of the other operatives finished it. By the 8th day, Sela had stopped feeling sick about it. By the 10th, she'd stopped feeling anything at all. The money appeared in her account exactly as promised. $2.5 million. More than she'd earn in 50 lifetimes of serving coffee and cleaning floors. Blood money. But money that could buy her a new life far from the Rust District and federal questions and memories that wouldn't fade. They met Kael again in a different diner, different city, same expressionless face. "Last one," he said, sliding a photograph across the table. Sela looked at it and felt her stomach drop. The woman in the photo was young, maybe 22. Pretty in an understated way. Dark hair pulled back, wearing a hospital uniform that Sela recognized immediately. "Her name is Claire," Kael said. "She was one of my accountants. Handled offshore accounts. She's smart enough to know those accounts are still active. Smart enough to trace them back to me if she looks hard enough." "Where is she?" "Working at City General, night shift. Started a week ago." He met Sela's eyes. "Same hospital where you work." The implication was clear. Claire wasn't just a loose end. She was a loose end in Sela's world, a connection waiting to be made. "What's the plan?" Sela asked, her voice flat. "Befriend her. Hospital co-workers, fellow night shift workers. Get her comfortable. Find out what she knows, who she's talked to." Kael paused. "Then call Maya." "And you kill her. We make sure she can't become a problem." "Yes." Sela looked at the photograph. Claire was smiling in it, candid shot. Probably didn't even know someone was taking her picture. She looked normal, innocent, like someone who'd made bad choices but deserved a chance to start over. Like Sela. "This is the last one," Sela said. "After this, we're done. I take the money and disappear. You never contact me again." "Agreed." "And if I say no? If I walk away now?" Kael's expression didn't change. "Then Claire becomes your problem. She connects you to me eventually. She talks to the wrong people. And you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." He leaned back. "But if you finish this, you're free. Really free. No loose ends, no threats, just you and $5 million and a new identity anywhere you want." It was the same choice he'd given her 2 weeks ago, work or die. Except now Sela understood there was no third option. She'd crossed too many lines already, helped kill too many people. She was part of Kael's world now, whether she wanted to be or not. The only question was whether she'd finish what she started or die trying to escape it. "1 week," Sela said. "I'll make contact, get what you need. Then I'm gone." 1 week, Kael agreed. Jitbites. Claire was easy to find. She worked the same shifts Sela did, just in a different department. Radiology instead of cafeteria. They crossed paths in the employee break room on the second night. Sela sat down at the same table and smiled. "Long shift?" Claire looked up from her phone. "The longest. You?" "Same. I'm Sela, cafeteria." "Claire, radiology." She went back to her phone. Not unfriendly, just tired. Over the next 3 days, Sela worked to build the connection. Small talk in the break room. Comments about the terrible hospital coffee. Complaints about management. The usual bonding that happened between people working miserable jobs together. By the 4th day, they were having lunch together. By the 5th, Claire was opening up about her life. About the boyfriend who'd left. The debt she was drowning in. The feeling that she'd made terrible choices and couldn't find her way out. "I used to work somewhere else," Claire said on the 6th day. "Better pay. But the people I worked for..." She stopped, shook her head. "Let's just say I'm glad I got out." "Bad bosses?" Sela asked. "Something like that." Claire looked at her. "You ever work somewhere and realize you're in way over your head? Like, you thought you knew what you were getting into, but then you see what's really happening and it's so much worse?
Yeah, I have. I was good at my job. Too good. Started noticing things, numbers that didn't add up, money moving through accounts that shouldn't exist. And when I asked questions, she stopped again. I should have just kept my mouth shut. But I couldn't, and now I'm here, making half what I used to, wondering if they're going to come looking for me. Sila's pulse quickened. Who's they? Doesn't matter. They're probably all dead or in jail by now anyway. You see the news about Avalon Tower? Yeah.
I worked for those people. The Veyrons, did their books, hid their money, all of it. Claire's voice dropped. And the scary thing is, I think one of them might still be alive. I've been watching the accounts. Money's still moving. Someone's still accessing them, which means either it's the feds or what? Or Cale Veyron isn't as dead as everyone thinks. There it was. The connection. The knowledge that made Claire dangerous. Sela pulled out her phone under the table and sent a single text to Maya. She knows. That's crazy, Sela said, keeping her voice light. You really think he survived? I don't know. Maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I've been staring at spreadsheets so long I'm seeing patterns that aren't there. Claire stood up. I should get back to work. But hey, thanks for listening. It's nice to talk to someone who doesn't think I'm insane. Anytime. Claire left. Sela sat alone in the break room and felt the weight of what came next pressing down on her chest. Maya would move tonight. Claire would disappear. Another problem solved. Another body Sela was responsible for, even if she didn't pull the trigger herself. And then it would be over. $5 million. New identity. Freedom. All she had to do was finish what she'd started. Sela stood up and headed back to work. She served coffee. She wiped down tables. She moved through the hospital like a ghost, but all she could think about was Claire's voice. I think one of them might still be alive. And the question that had been growing louder in Sela's mind since the diner, what happens when Kael runs out of loose ends to tie off? What happens when Sela becomes the last person who knows he's alive? Bye. Maya called at 2 a.m. Where is she? Radiology, 3rd floor. Should be alone this time of night. Good. Stay where you are. This'll be quick. The line went dead. Sela stood in the empty cafeteria, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. She could stop this, could call security, could warn Claire, could blow up everything and damn the consequences. But then what? Kael would send someone else. Claire would die anyway, and Sela would be back on the list of problems to solve. There was no good choice, just bad and worse. She waited. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 15. Then her phone rang. Maya. We have a problem. Sela's blood went cold. What kind of problem? She's not here. Her shift ended early. Security says she left an hour ago. And Sela? Maya's voice went hard. She cleared out her locker, took everything, like she knew we were coming. That's impossible. I didn't. Someone tipped her. Either you did or she's smarter than we thought. Either way, she's in the win now, which means she's a problem that's going to get worse. A pause. Kael wants to see you now, Saek. They met in an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, the same area where Lucian had kept his files. Fitting, Sela thought. Everything coming full circle. Kael was waiting when Maya brought her in. He stood in the center of the empty space, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. 3 other operatives flanked him, armed, ready. Did you warn her? Kael asked without preamble. No. Then how did she know? I don't know. Maybe she's been watching the accounts like she said. Maybe she saw patterns, connected dots. She's smart. You said so yourself. Smart enough to disappear completely in the next 6 hours. Kael pulled out his phone and showed her a screen. Bank transactions, digital footprints, a trail leading to a private airport. She's running. And when she runs, she takes everything she knows with her. Everything about me, about you, about all of this. So find her. You have people. I have people looking. But she's got a head start and she knows how to move money without leaving traces. She learned from the best. He pocketed the phone. Which is why I need you to do something. What? Call her. Tell her you're scared. Tell her people are asking about her at the hospital. Tell her you think you're both in danger and you need to meet. Somewhere public. Somewhere she'll feel safe. And then?
Then we take her, quiet, clean, no more loose ends.
Sela looked at him, at Maya, at the armed operatives, at the warehouse that felt like a tomb.
If I do this, she said slowly, if I help you kill Claire, what's to stop you from deciding I'm a loose end too? I know everything. I've helped you murder 6 people. 7, if we count Claire. I'm the biggest liability you have. You're also the one I'm paying $5 million to disappear. Money's just numbers. Bodies are permanent. Sela took a step back. How do I know you won't kill me the second Claire's dead? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was cold, honest. You don't. The admission hung in the air like a blade. But here's the thing, Kale continued. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead already. I've had dozens of chances. But you're more useful alive. You understand discretion. You understand consequences. And most importantly, you understand that we're both tied to this now. You help me disappear completely, and I help you do the same. Mutually assured destruction. It's the only currency that matters in my world. So I'm supposed to trust you? No. You're supposed to be smart enough to know that killing you gains me nothing and creates problems I don't need. He pulled out a piece of paper, an account number. Make the call. Help me end this. And when it's done, I transfer the rest of your money. You walk away with $5 million and a new identity, or you refuse, and we see how long you last on your own. Sela stared at the paper, at Kael's face, at the trap closing around her with perfect precision. She'd walked into this thinking she could be something more than invisible, thinking she could matter. Instead, she'd become exactly what Kael had always seen her as, a tool, a piece, a problem to be managed. But she was still alive, and as long as she was alive, she had options. Give me your number, Sela said. Kael handed her a phone. Make it convincing. Sela dialed. The phone rang 3 times. Then Claire's voice, wary and scared. Hello? Claire, it's Sela. From the hospital. Listen, I don't have much time. People came asking about you tonight. Federal agents. They wanted to know if you'd talked to anyone, if you'd mentioned names. I told them I didn't know anything, but Claire, they're looking for you. And I think they're looking for me too now. Sela? Claire's voice trembled. What's happening? I don't know, but I'm scared. I think we're both in trouble. Can we meet somewhere public? There's a coffee shop on 5th Street near the university, lots of people. We can figure this out together, please. I don't know who else to trust. A long pause. Sela could hear Claire breathing on the other end, thinking, weighing options. Okay, Claire said finally, 1 hour. But if this is a setup, it's not. I promise. I'm just as scared as you are. Another pause, then 1 hour. Come alone. The line went dead. Sela lowered the phone slowly. Her hands were shaking. She'd just lured another person to their death. Another name on the list of people who'd trusted her and paid with their lives. Good, Kael said. Maya will go with you. She'll stay back. You approach Claire alone. Get her comfortable. Then signal when you're ready. How? Touch your left ear. That's the signal. We move in, take her, and it's done. Quick, clean, last loose end. And then? Then you get your money and disappear, just like we agreed. Sela looked at him one more time, at the man who'd orchestrated everything, who'd built an empire on violence and burned it down rather than let someone else control it, who'd used her like a weapon and was about to discard her the moment she stopped being useful. 1 hour, she said. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Behind her, she heard Maya's footsteps following, heard Kael giving orders to the other operatives, heard the machinery of death grinding into motion. And somewhere deep inside, Sela felt something crack. Not break, not shatter, just crack. A fissure running through her foundation that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. She was about to help murder an innocent woman, and the worst part was, she didn't know if she'd actually go through with it or not. Not until the moment came. Not until she stood face to face with Claire and had to choose between her own survival and whatever shred of humanity she had left. The coffee shop was 20 minutes away. Sela had 20 minutes to decide what kind of person she was going to be. 20 minutes to choose between drowning slow and going down fast. She got in the car, and as they drove through the city toward the last loose end, Sela Moreno, invisible janitor, reluctant killer, ghost in training, finally understood what Kyle had known all along. In his world, there were no heroes, only survivors, and the people they destroyed to stay alive. The coffee shop on 5th Street was exactly what Sela expected. Students hunched over laptops, the hiss of espresso machines, jazz playing too loud, the kind of place where you could have a quiet conversation and nobody would remember your face. Perfect for a meeting, perfect for a murder. Sela sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Maya was somewhere outside, watching. Kyle's other operatives positioned around the block. The trap was set. All Sela had to do was spring it. She wrapped her hands around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched and watched the door. Claire arrived exactly on time. She looked worse than she had at the hospital. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She scanned the room with the wariness of prey, then spotted Sela and made her way over. "Hey," Claire said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey." They sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Claire ordered tea from a passing server, then leaned forward. "You said federal agents came asking questions." "Yeah, 2 of them. Showed up at the hospital around midnight. Asked if I knew you, if we talked." "What you'd said." Sela kept her voice low, scared. "I told them we'd had lunch a few times, that's all. But Claire, they knew things. About Avalon Tower, about the Veyrons, about money moving through offshore accounts." Claire's face went pale. "Did they say why they were looking for me?" "Something about a federal investigation. Ongoing. They said anyone connected to the Veyron organization was a person of interest. That we should come forward if we knew anything." Sela paused. "Do you know anything?" "I knew enough to leave." Claire's hands were shaking. She wrapped them around her tea. "I did work for them, for years. I knew what I was doing was probably illegal, but the money was good and I convinced myself it was just accounting, just numbers. But then I started seeing patterns, realized the scale of what they were running, and I got scared." "So you quit?" "I tried. But you don't just quit working for people like the Veyrons. They own you. They have files on you, evidence that makes you complicit. So I had to be smart about it, had to make sure I had leverage of my own before I walked away." Sela's pulse quickened. "What kind of leverage?" "Copies. Of everything. Account numbers. Transaction histories. Names of everyone in the organization. I've kept it hidden. Insurance, in case they ever came after me. But now—" She stopped, looked at Sela with sudden intensity. "You're not really scared of federal agents, are you?" The question landed like a bullet. Sela's hand moved unconsciously toward her left ear. The signal. All she had to do was touch it, and Maya would move. Claire would be dead in minutes. Problem solved. But something in Claire's eyes stopped her. Not fear, not anger, just exhaustion. The look of someone who'd been running too long and was tired of pretending they'd ever reach safety. "No," Sela said quietly. "I'm not." Claire stood up, fast. Her chair scraped back. "I knew it. I knew this was—" "Wait." Sela grabbed her wrist. "Please, just listen. Let go of me. I'm not with the feds, but I'm not here to help you either. The people I work for, they sent me to find you, to get information, to set you up." The words came out in a rush. Honest, raw. "But I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be the person who leads people to slaughter." Claire jerked her arm free. "Then what do you want?" "I want to stop being a pawn. I want to stop being used, and I think you do too." Sela looked toward the window. She couldn't see Maya, but she knew she was there, watching, waiting for the signal. "We have maybe 2 minutes before they realize something's wrong. So I need to know, do you really have leverage? Real evidence that could burn everything down?" "Yes." "Where?" "Why would I tell you that? Because if Kyle Veyron is still alive, and I know he is, then he's going to keep coming after you until you're dead. And he's going to come after me too because I know he's alive. We're both loose ends, both problems waiting to be solved." Sela leaned forward. "But if we pool what we know, if we actually use that leverage instead of hiding behind it, maybe we can survive this." Claire stared at her. "You're insane." "Probably, but I'm also the only person in this coffee shop who's actually being honest with you. So you can run right now and hope you get far enough before they catch you. Or you can trust me and we finish this together." The seconds stretched out.
Sela could feel Maya's eyes on her, could imagine Kael listening through whatever surveillance they'd planted, could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on both of them. Then Claire sat back down. Cloud server, she said quietly. Encrypted. Multiple backups. Everything I took from the Veyron organization. Account numbers, shell companies, every politician and judge on the payroll, everything. She pulled out her phone. I've had it set to release automatically if I don't check in every 72 hours. My insurance. So we use it. We send it everywhere. Every news outlet, every federal agency, the FBI, the IRS, the SEC, all of it at once. Create so much noise that Kael can't silence us without exposing himself. And then what? We still die, just louder. Maybe. Or maybe we become too visible to kill, too connected to too many people. Not loose ends anymore, just witnesses who've already told their story. Sela pulled out her own phone. But we have to do it now, before they move in. Claire looked towards the window, then back at Sela. If this goes wrong, it probably will, but drowning slow is worse. A smile flickered across Claire's face. Brief, bitter. My sister used to say something like that. Smart sister. Dead sister. The words hung there for a moment. A shared understanding of what came next, of the price they were about to pay for refusing to be victims anymore. Claire opened her phone and started typing. I'm sending you the access codes. When I hit enter, everything gets released. There's no taking it back, no negotiating. It all goes public. Good. You're sure? Sela thought about the last 3 weeks, about dragging a bleeding man out of a stairwell, about being used as bait, about leading 6 people to their deaths because she'd been too scared and too desperate to say no, about becoming exactly what Kael had always known she could be, a killer, a tool, a ghost. I'm sure, she said. Claire hit enter. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the coffee shop and the jazz music and 2 women sitting across from each other making the kind of choice you can't come back from. Then Sela's phone buzzed, a message from Maya. What's taking so long? Sela typed back, it's done. She's ready. Another buzz. Signal when clear. Sela looked at Claire. We need to move, now, out the back. They'll realize what we did in about 60 seconds. They stood and headed for the rear exit. Behind them, Sela heard the coffee shop door open, saw Maya's reflection in the glass, saw her eyes widen as she realized both targets were moving. They ran. Ew. The alley behind the coffee shop was narrow and dark and smelled like garbage. Sela and Claire sprinted through it, their footsteps echoing off brick walls. Behind them, shouts. Running. The sound of people giving chase. Where are we going? Claire gasped. I don't know. Somewhere public, somewhere with cameras, somewhere they can't just shoot us without witnesses. They burst onto a main street. Traffic. Pedestrians. The university campus spreading out before them. Sela grabbed Claire's hand and pulled her toward the library. A massive building with security and students and enough foot traffic that a murder would be difficult to hide. They made it through the front doors and kept moving. Past the circulation desk, into the stacks, deep into the building where the oldest books lived and nobody ever went. Finally, they stopped, both gasping for air, both shaking. Did we? Claire couldn't finish. I don't know. Sela pulled out her phone. Dozens of notifications, news alerts, federal agencies responding. The file had gone out. Everything, every dirty secret, every corrupt official, the entire Veyron Empire's architecture exposed for the world to see. And in the middle of it all, a message from Kael. You just killed us both. Sela stared at the words. Then she typed back, good. At least we'll die honest. She deleted the message thread and powered off the phone. Now what? Claire asked. Now we wait. Either the feds pick us up and we tell them everything, or Kael finds us and we die. Either way, the story's already out. The damage is done. They sat on the floor between shelves of forgotten books and waited for the world to catch up. The federal agents found them first. 4 hours later, library closing, security doing their final sweep. 2 FBI agents in suits that looked government-issued followed them in. Sela and Claire didn't run, didn't fight, just stood up and put their hands where they could be seen. Sela Moreno? Claire Chen? The lead agent was a woman in her 40s. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense voice. We need you to come with us. Are we under arrest? Sela asked. That depends on how cooperative you are. We've received some very interesting files in the last few hours. Files that mention both your names. So you're either witnesses or accomplices. Time to figure out which. They were taken to a federal building downtown. Separate rooms, separate interrogations. Sela sat across from 3 agents and answered every question they asked. Yes, she'd helped Kyle Veyron. Yes, she'd been complicit in murders. Yes, she had information about his current location and operations. She told them everything, every safe house, every contact, every account number Kyle had mentioned. She burned it all down with the kind of thoroughness that comes from having nothing left to lose. When she was done, the lead agent leaned back and studied her. You understand you're confessing to multiple felonies. I understand. Why? Why turn on him now? Because I'm tired of being invisible, and because someone needs to prove that you can stand up to men like Kyle Veyron and survive. Sela met the agent's eyes. Even if survival means prison. The agent was quiet for a long moment. Then, we'll need you to testify. Grand jury. Maybe trial if it goes that far. You willing? Yes. And Kyle Veyron's current location? I don't know, but I can tell you where he'll be tomorrow night. How do you know? Because I know how he thinks. He's not going to run. He's going to come for me. Try to clean up the mess before it gets worse. Sela pulled out a piece of paper and wrote an address. The abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. He'll want somewhere familiar, somewhere he controls. And he'll want to do it himself this time, not send operatives. This is personal now. The agent took the paper. You're volunteering as bait. I'm volunteering to finish this, one way or another. They set the trap for the following night. Federal agents positioned around the warehouse. SWAT on standby. Sela wore a wire and walked into the building alone at exactly midnight. The same time, the same place. Everything coming full circle. Kale was waiting. He stood in the center of the empty space, hands in his pockets, looking exactly as he had the first time they'd met here, except now there was something different in his eyes. Not anger, not even disappointment, just resignation. I knew you'd turn, he said. The moment you didn't give the signal at the coffee shop, I knew. Then why come? You had to know this was a trap. Because you deserve the truth. After everything, you deserve at least that. He took a step closer. The agents outside wouldn't move until he pulled a weapon or made a threat. They'd been clear about that. You asked me once if any of it was real, the desperation, the fear, the need, and I told you it was both. You lied. I omitted. There's the difference. Kale's voice was calm, even. Everything I told you about Lyra was true. Everything I did to protect her was real. The only lie was making you think you were the hero of that story. You weren't. You were a tool, a very effective tool, but still just a tool. Why are you telling me this? Because in about 30 seconds, federal agents are going to storm in here and arrest me, and I want you to understand something before that happens. He met her eyes. You think you've won, think you've broken free, but you're wrong. You're not free. You're just in a different cage. Instead of working for me, you're working for them. Instead of killing for money, you'll kill for testimony, for deals, for whatever scraps of immunity they offer you. You'll still be invisible, still be nobody, just with a different master. The words hit harder than they should have, because part of Sela knew he was right. She'd traded one form of servitude for another, would spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for revenge, waiting for the next Kale Veyron to decide she was a problem worth solving. Maybe, she said, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Will you? Kale smiled. You helped me kill 6 people, Sela. You lured them, gained their trust, watched them die. You think testimony erases that? You think cooperation makes you innocent? He shook his head. You're a killer now, same as me, same as everyone in my world. The only difference is you're a killer who lies to herself about what she is. You're wrong. Am I? Then answer me this. When you sleep tonight, whose face do you see? Claire's? Marcus's? All those people who trusted you and died because of it? He took another step. You wanted to matter. Wanted to be something more than invisible. Congratulations. You're memorable now. You're the janitor who helped a monster burn down an empire. They'll write articles about you, make podcasts. You'll be famous for being the woman who betrayed everyone who ever trusted her. Sela felt something hot and sharp rise in her throat. I saved Claire. I turned on you. I'm trying to make it right. You're trying to survive, just like everyone else. Don't dress it up as nobility. Don't pretend you're better than me. Kael's voice went soft, almost gentle. We're the same, you and I. We both do terrible things to stay alive. The only difference is, I'm honest about it. The agents burst in before Sela could respond. A dozen of them, weapons drawn, shouting orders. Kael didn't resist, just raised his hands and got to his knees like he'd done this before. Like he'd expected it. They cuffed him, read him his rights, started dragging him toward the exit. But he looked back at Sela one last time. You'll never escape this. You'll never be free, because every time you close your eyes, you'll remember what you did, who you became, and you'll wonder if I was right all along. Then he was gone. And Sela stood alone in the empty warehouse, the wire still recording against her chest, listening to the echo of his words in the darkness. What? The trial took 9 months, Sela testified. So did Claire. So did dozens of other witnesses who'd been part of Kael's world and were willing to trade information for lighter sentences. The prosecution built their case brick by brick, using the files Claire had released as the foundation. Kael pled guilty to everything, didn't fight, didn't try to make deals, just sat in court and listened to witness after witness describe his crimes with the same expression of distant boredom he'd worn in the coffee shop. When it was Sela's turn to testify, she told the truth. All of it. The stairwell, the apartment, the murder she'd helped facilitate, the way Kael had used her, the way she'd let herself be used because she'd been desperate to matter. The prosecutor asked her, "Do you regret helping him?" Sela thought about it, really thought. I regret who I became, but I don't regret trying to save an innocent girl. Even if the girl was never really in danger, even if I was being manipulated, the impulse was real, the desire to help was real. Everything after that, she stopped, looked at Kael. Everything after that was me making choices, bad choices, but mine. And if you could go back, would you do anything differently? I would have walked away. The night I found him in that stairwell, I would have kept walking and let him bleed out. And I'd still be nobody, still be invisible, still be safe. She paused. But I didn't, and now I have to live with that. The judge sentenced Kael to life without parole, multiple consecutive sentences. He'd die in prison. Everyone knew it. He knew it. When they let him out of the courtroom, he passed Sela's seat and stopped, just for a moment, long enough to lean close and whisper, "You were never invisible to me." Then he was gone. Sela took the immunity deal the prosecutors offered. No jail time in exchange for her testimony. A new identity, relocation assistance, the standard package for witnesses who'd cooperated. She became someone else, moved somewhere else, found another service job in another city where nobody knew her face or her name. Back to being invisible, back to being nobody. She worked in a bookstore now, shelving books, helping customers. The same kind of quiet anonymity she'd had before, except now she understood what it cost to try to be something more. 6 months after the trial, a package arrived at her new address. Inside was a newspaper clipping, an article about Lyra Veyron, Kael's sister, the real one. She'd graduated early from her private school, earned a scholarship to college, was studying to be a teacher. The article mentioned her brother briefly, but mostly it focused on how she'd overcome tragedy to build a normal life. Beneath the clipping was a handwritten note. "Thank you for keeping me safe, even when you didn't know you were doing it. You gave my brother something to fight for that wasn't revenge. Something good. I hope you find the same for yourself." Sela stared at the note for a long time. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a box with the photograph of Lyra on the beach and Kael's message about being invisible. Evidence of a life she'd lived. Proof that for a brief moment she'd mattered. She'd been part of something bigger than herself, even if that something had been terrible and violent and wrong. She kept the box in her closet, didn't look at it often, but knowing it was there helped somehow. A reminder that she'd been real once, that she'd made choices and faced consequences and survived. that she'd been seen. 2 years later, Sela was shelving books in the philosophy section when she heard the news. The television in the break room was playing, a reporter's voice cutting through the usual afternoon quiet. Breaking news in the Kael Veyron case. The convicted crime lord was found dead in his cell this morning. Prison officials are calling it a suicide, but sources suggest. Sela stopped listening. She stood in the empty aisle holding a book she couldn't remember picking up and felt nothing. Not relief, not grief. Just a hollow sense of something ending that had already been over for a long time. That night, she sat in her small apartment, different from the one in the Rust district, but not much better, and thought about the last 2 years, about the nightmares that still came sometimes, about the faces she saw when she closed her eyes, about the weight of choices she couldn't undo. Kael had been right about one thing. She'd never be free. Not really. The person she'd been before that snowy night in the stairwell was gone. Dead. What remained was someone harder, colder, someone who understood exactly how much survival could cost. But Kael had been wrong about something too. She wasn't the same as him, because when she looked in the mirror now, she didn't see a killer. She saw someone who'd made terrible choices and was trying every day to be better. Someone who'd been used and manipulated and broken, but who'd found the strength to stand up and tell the truth anyway. Someone who'd learned that being nobody was better than being the kind of somebody who destroyed lives to build empires. She was invisible again, and this time she was grateful for it. The city outside her window kept moving. Millions of lights. Millions of people living their small, ordinary lives. None of them knowing about the war that had been fought in the shadows. None of them caring about a janitor who'd helped burn down an empire. And that was fine. Sela Moreno had learned the hardest lesson there was. Sometimes survival means accepting you'll never be the hero of your own story. Sometimes it means being grateful just to make it through. Sometimes it means choosing to be nobody, because being somebody comes with a price too high to pay. She turned off the television, made herself tea, sat by the window, and watched the city breathe. Tomorrow she'd go back to work. She'd shelve books and help customers and move through the world like a ghost. She'd carry the weight of what she'd done and who she'd become. She'd live with the nightmares and the guilt and the knowledge that 6 people were dead because she'd been too scared and too desperate to say no. But she'd live. That was something. That was enough. The snow started falling outside. Soft and quiet. Nothing like the violent storm the night Kael Veyron died. Just gentle flakes drifting down through streetlight, covering the city in white, covering the scars, making everything look clean and new, at least for a little while. Sela watched until the tea went cold. Then she closed the curtains, locked the door, and went to bed. And for the first time in 2 years, she slept through the night without dreaming of fire. Epilogue. 3 years after the trial, a letter arrived with no return address. Sela almost threw it away, almost ignored it like she'd ignored every other piece of her old life, but something made her open it anyway. Inside was a single page. Handwritten, the script precise and careful. Sela, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not dead, despite what the news reported. Dead enough that nobody will look for me. Dead enough to finally be free. You were right that night in the warehouse. We weren't the same. I was honest about being a monster. You were honest about trying not to be one. That distinction matters more than I gave it credit for. I spent my life building empires and burning bridges, hurting people, using them. I told myself it was survival, that I was just doing what I had to do. But the truth is, I liked it. The power, the control, the fear in people's eyes when they realized I owned them. You taught me something I'd forgotten, that there's strength in choosing not to own people, in letting them walk away, in accepting that some prices are too high, even for survival. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't want it. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that the last good thing I did, the only good thing maybe, was letting you turn on me. I could have killed you 12 times, could have silenced you before you became a problem. But I didn't, not because I was weak, not because I was sentimental, but because you reminded me what it felt like to care about someone's survival more than my own. Lyra's safe. Claire is safe. You're safe. That's my legacy. Not the empire, not the fear, Just 3 women who got to keep living because I finally learned when to let go. Be invisible. Be nobody. Be free. You earned it. Kaysila read the letter 3 times. Then she burned it in her kitchen sink and washed the ashes down the drain. She didn't cry, didn't feel relief or anger or vindication, just a quiet sense of something finally closing, a door shutting, a chapter ending. Kyle Veyron had been a monster, had used her, had turned her into someone she'd spent years trying not to be. But in the end, he'd let her go, had chosen her survival over his own ego. And that small act of grace, maybe the only one he'd ever managed, was enough. Not forgiveness, not redemption, just enough. Sela went back to work, shelved books, helped customers, lived her small, invisible life. And when people asked if she'd always worked in bookstores, she said yes, because the woman who dragged a dying crime lord out of a stairwell and helped him burn down an empire didn't exist anymore. That woman had died in the fire. What remained was just Sela. Nobody special, nobody important, just a woman who'd survived something terrible and learned to live with the scars. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered. The one where she kept breathing, kept moving, kept choosing every single day to be better than the worst thing she'd ever done. The city outside kept spinning, the snow kept falling, and Sela Moreno, invisible, unremarkable, free, finally learned how to live.